Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 1821. 4 Great Forbidden Lands. After successfully passing Madame Moon's test, Zen was set free. The female disciples who had entered the Purple Soul Hall were all focused on cultivating the purple or a godly way, in hopes to gain great achievement in terms of the godly way as quickly as possible. Up until now, Zen had been having difficulties improving his cultivation base. More so, the Purple Soul Hall didn't keep the disciples under strict control and thus, everyone present had enough spare time on their hands. Fortunately though, no one in the Purple Soul Hall had controlled Zen. These past few days, he swam around the Purple Soul Hall lazily, informing himself roughly about the disciples of the big clans on the floating islands. There were 7 jade walls of legends in the Purple Soul Hall, including the one in the nameless hall which Zen had entered before. Each one of them had their names on the jade walls of legends and could enter the arena of legends in order to challenge the others. Every month, everyone had the obligation to challenge 3 opponents. If they left the floating island that month, they still had to complete 3 challenges in a very limited time frame after they returned. Everything would be recorded dutifully. For the most part though, the vast majority of true gods were unwilling to challenge their opponents in the arena of legends. They were more willing to explore the Forbidden Lands and earn divine might coins through doing so. This was with reason, however. There were just too many masters in the arena of legends, and the opponents selected based on their points often had the same strength as theirs. If they were to be accidentally defeated, points would be deducted and it would be difficult to obtain the qualifications for entering certain Forbidden Lands. This explained why the floating island forced everyone to participate in a minimum of 3 battles. In addition to these kinds of information, Zen was also carefully collecting information about Murphy. The Mu clan's floating island, which was led by Murphy, ranked 7th, more powerful than the Han clan which ranked 10th. And the woman named Rochelle Mu was ranked 3rd, at the top of all the Jade Walls of Legends. Her ranking was even higher than that of Harold, Augustus and Hallett. Harold was Zen's father's chief disciple. And yet, the Luo clan's floating island had been completely destroyed. Zen wondered how Harold had even managed to maintain his ranking. He was confused, but couldn't find the answer here in the Purple Soul Hall. That day, he simply decided to leave the Purple Soul Hall and head to the Han clan's Holy Emperor City. The Han clan's floating island was divided into 3 parts. The Purple Soul Hall was controlled by Joy, a demi-holy being. Aside from the Purple Soul Hall, the Holy Emperor City and the Spiritual Heart Hall were the other 2 parts that made up the floating island. The direct descendants of the Han clan's Holy Emperor lived in the Spiritual Heart Hall, and no ordinary warrior had the permission to enter this place. The Holy Emperor City was known as the location with the heaviest population throughout the entire floating island. Most of the disciples from the Han clan and other clans were gathered in the Holy Emperor City. Before entering the Holy Emperor City, they had to go through the guard's inspection. Fortunately for him, Zen already had his own jade token. When the 2 guards saw Zen holding his jade token, they glanced at one another and then back at him. A trace of ridicule appeared on their faces. A man from the Purple Soul Hall. How rare it is that we see any man from there. Zen silently put his jade token away before entering the Holy Emperor City. It wasn't until he had actually entered the Holy Emperor City that he truly understood the amount of people there, as well as why the Han clan disciples were envious of those in the Purple Soul Hall. The moment Zen stepped into the city gate, his view was instantly filled with various true gods. There was noise everywhere. The city looked like a market crowded with mortals. The true gods in the city all had fame and prestige, and could live forever. It was indeed hard for them to jostle with the crowds. Tomorrow, a 3rd grade Forbidden Land will open, and we've specifically come in order to recruit 12 mid-rank true gods who have 2,000 points. We equally need 3 low-rank true gods who possess 500 points each. Together, we'll enter the demon-annihilating forest. On the square to Zen's right, hundreds of true gods were shouting loudly, inviting the other true gods of the same level to explore the Forbidden Lands with them. And just like Zen already knew, a Forbidden Land was linked with points. If one wanted to enter a certain forbidden land, then one had to try their best to obtain the required number of points. The demon annihilating forest. Ha ha. In Zen's mind, Master Evil revealed a look of envy. It's so easy for these guys to enter the demon annihilating forest. This world is just so unfair. What exactly is the demon annihilating forest? Zen asked curiously. Master Evil replied with emotion, it's a second-grade forbidden land, but it's very small. In the past, before the demon annihilating forest was controlled by the wealthy clans on the floating islands, many ordinary true gods would enter it. In fact, even I was a regular visitor of it at the time. After a while though, even the demon annihilating forest became occupied by the powerful clans. Alas! A second-grade forbidden land. How many forbidden lands of this kind can be found in the divine land, anyway? Zen questioned. In order to reply to Zen, Master Evil simply introduced the division of forbidden lands within the divine land. Ever since the Hall of Holy Beings had been established, it was in constant monopoly of the resources throughout the entire divine land, especially within the said forbidden lands. And since its establishment, the 4 great forbidden lands were declared as belonging to the Hall of Holy Beings. No true god was allowed to enter without the Hall of Holy Beings' permission. Prior to such an occurrence though, everyone was allowed to enter and exit any forbidden land across the divine land. This change caused everyone's dissatisfaction in the divine land. However, even though they weren't happy with this decision, who would dare challenge the Holy Beings' authority? Originally, the Hall of Holy Beings only controlled the 4 great forbidden lands. However, as time went on, all kinds of forbidden lands of different sizes were placed under the Hall of Holy Beings' control. The forbidden lands in the divine land were divided from 1st to 6th grade, according to the degree of danger. The 4 great forbidden places were 6th grades, and they were equally considered to be the most dangerous places in the whole divine land. These 4 great forbidden places were respectively known as Soul Wilderness, Everest Spirit Mountain, Swirl Forest, and Abyss Demon Region. So far, the rich clans on the floating islands had explored the 4 great forbidden lands countless times, but still to this day, they didn't have a complete understanding of them. While exploring the 4 great forbidden lands, it was even possible for a true god who had reached the consummate level of cultivation to die accidentally. The dangers here were not to be underestimated. Is the Swirl Forest also one of the 4 great forbidden lands? Zen asked with wonder in his voice. Master Evil nodded. Yes. Then how did you ever escape from that place? Bromley's fairy palace was standing in the middle of Swirl Forest. Zen had a deep impression of the forest from back when the fairy palace's enchanted barrier had opened. Holy Bromley's fairy palace isn't located in the deepest depths of the Swirl Forest. And honestly, we were just so lucky that day, so we managed to flee. It was almost a miracle. Speaking of such, Master Evil was still somewhat frightened from his experience. The beasts in the Swirl Forest had rushed to the fairy palace in a craze, but the beasts didn't get them into trouble. Suddenly, someone on the side of the square shouted out of nowhere, "Don't go to the Everest Spirit Mountain for the time being. The Zhang clan's members and Herald are fighting with each other there. You'd better be careful." Zen's eyebrows shot upward as these words reached his ears. Zen had been looking for and asking about this kind of information ever since he had arrived in the Han clan's floating island. Most of the warriors who cultivated in the Purple Soul Hall were women, in fact. Thus, they didn't really care about the situation happening over in the divine land, and Zen could only obtain very little information. He hadn't expected to hear Herald's news as soon as he stepped foot inside the Han clan's Holy Emperor city. What's going on? Is Herald fighting with the Zhang clan again? Does Herald control the Everest Spirit Mountain? With his strength alone, how does he dare cause trouble in the Zhang clan again and again? I don't know what he wants to do to them. Ha ha, if he has really annoyed the Holy Emperor of the Zhang clan, then he'll surely die. After all, even Holy Mike is dying, so he has no one to help him out. I don't think so. Herald has stayed in the Everest Spirit Mountain for so many years. If he really controls the Everest Spirit Mountain, even the Zhang clan's Holy Emperor probably wouldn't do anything to punish him. With his eyes blazing, Zen pushed through the bustling crowd and walked straight toward the man who had just spoke. The man, who had a cultivation base of a mid-rank true god, was wrapped in a strange veil, and looked rather kind. Hey, friend, how's the fight going between Herald and the Zhang clan? Can you tell me in detail? Zen asked calmly. The man originally took no notice of Zen. After he heard Zen's words though, he glanced at him with a strange expression on his face. Approving godly warrior, what are you even doing here? The true gods in this square would exchange information about the Forbidden Lands with each other, and at the same time, they would pick candidates they liked in order to have them explore the Forbidden Lands. Generally speaking, when proving godly warriors entered the floating island, they would wholeheartedly cultivate the godly way and had no time for traveling to the Forbidden Lands. It doesn't matter if I am a proving godly warrior or not. I just want to know more information about the matter you just mentioned, Zen said in a serious tone this time. He didn't care about Harold in the least. Although Harold was one of his father's disciples, he had never met Zen. What Zen cared about was that Yan, his sister, stayed with Harold. Go away. You are just a proving godly warrior. You don't have the qualifications to know such information. Leave my presence and continue your cultivation. The man waved his hand impatiently at Zen, trying to drive him away. Ha ha, little guy, you've got nothing more than an average cultivation base. Why do you want to hear these rumors so badly? Entering the Han clan's floating island is not an easy task. What you should try doing now is improving your cultivation base. A few true gods also mocked Zen. The appearance of a proving godly warrior had truly surprised them all. Splash! As Zen gently shook his hand, hundreds of divine might coins poured out from his palm. Zen stared at the mid-rank true god and stated in a serious and flat tone, "Tell me the matter of Harold and the Zhang clan. Then, I will give you all these divine might coins." Chapter 1822, The Everest Spirit Mountain. The true gods of the floating islands were different from those in the six-burden divine city. They were much richer than the true gods outside the time sea and could explore forbidden lands with their points to obtain divine might coins. Despite this, the hundreds of divine might coins that Zen had thrown away were a large sum to them. Since they were on the floating island of the Han clan, Zen knew they couldn't dare to act rashly. He didn't care about the divine might coins. All he wanted was to get news of Harold and Yan. If I tell you, all these divine might coins are mine. The speaker licked his lips. Zen, a proving godly warrior, had generously thrown out hundreds of divine might coins, because of which the true gods had begun to feverishly speculate about his identity. They usually obtained only a few dozens of divine might coins from exploring a forbidden land. Even if they were lucky enough, they would only get about 100 coins, and that was after risking their lives. But now, they could receive such a large amount of coins merely by sharing a piece of news with Zen. Their greed knew no bounds. You want to know about the fight between Harold and the Zhang clan, right? I know about it too. I can tell you, a true god said. Harold rules the Everest Spirit Mountain and has the ability to fight against holy beings. He led his men to fight the Zhang clan a few days ago, another true god chimed in, his eyes fixed on the divine might coins at Zen's feet. Although Zen had offered a lot of divine might coins, the true gods wouldn't scramble for them. There were no fixed rules on the floating island, but no one dared act recklessly. Moreover, Zen had offered so many divine might coins at once that it made everyone wary about his background and power. Harold's situation wasn't a big secret. The mid-rank true god had warned everyone to be careful when they had gone to the Everest Spirit Mountain. He hadn't expected Zen to offer so many divine might coins. When he saw the other few true gods scrambling for the coins, his expression shifted. He stared at Zen as he said, "Don't listen to them. I have first-hand news. Most of them don't even know the inside story. Take the divine might coins. Let's talk about it somewhere else," Zen said coldly. He did not want to attract too much attention. He had taken an assumed name and called himself Thad, but he was still a Luo. His blatant inquiries about Mike's disciple would definitely raise doubts. Although Zen was just a proving godly warrior, he was not inferior to the mid-rank true gods in terms of aura. It was true that money made the world spin. The mid-rank true god did not show any antipathy to his cold attitude. Instead, he eagerly picked up the divine might coins off the ground and walked away with Zen. Disappointed that they had lost their chance to make a fortune, the other true gods began to complain. Is that guy crazy? He offered hundreds of divine might coins for a piece of useless news. It's a pity he didn't ask me. Zen led the mid-rank true god to a quiet place and said, "You can tell me now." The mid-rank true god laughed and said, "I'm very curious. You're just a proving godly warrior. How did you get so many divine might coins? Are you from the Han clan?" "Don't ask what doesn't concern you," Zen said, scowling. "That's not an answer, but okay," he said. Afraid that he might annoy Zen, he continued speaking. After all, he had taken Zen's coins. Harold had taken action against the Zhang clan the last time. To be honest, I'm also curious about why he did that. As Mike's first disciple, he should turn to the Mu clan even if he wants to take revenge. But not long ago, he attacked the Zhang clan. He didn't kill anyone, though. At the time, the Zhang clan had sent their people to various universes. But he had forced back those people. Zen nodded. He knew that Win had helped him and Rocher to sneak into the Divine Land in order to escape the attention of the Mu clan. As long as Irene was in the evolutionary universe, it was impossible for him to escape from the people of the Zhang clan. She returned to the Divine Land and had never been seen again since. Win told Zen that it was Harold who had stopped the Zhang clan when Zen had stealthily gone to the Divine Land. Can Harold fight against the holy beings with his current strength? Zen asked. The mid-rank true god stared longingly into the distance, but then he shook his head. In terms of real strength, he is inferior to the holy beings. After all, the holy beings created the universes, and as long as the universes are not destroyed, they will not die. You know, Mike doesn't die although he's at death's doorstep. If the holy beings of the Zhang clan decide to fight, will it be difficult for Harold to deal with them? Zen asked. The mid-rank true god looked at Zen strangely and asked, do you really not know or are you pretending not to know? Zen was about to shake his head when Master Evil's voice sounded in his mind. Zen, if Harold has really controlled the Everest Spirit Mountain, he is not afraid of the holy beings. Likewise, Estelle has controlled the Soul Wilderness, which is why she isn't afraid of the holy beings. Estelle, Zen asked curiously, the woman on the second floor of the dungeon. Master Evil didn't want to talk about that woman. He had stayed with her in the dungeon for several eras, but even now, the mere mention of her still filled him with fear. Estelle wasn't afraid of the holy beings. Instead, the holy beings were afraid of her. Once she had begun ruling the Soul Wilderness, she obtained a treasure scepter. Since then, no holy being was as arrogant as before in front of her. It was not long after she got the scepter that she used it for the first time. And when she had done so, the inner worlds of all the holy beings and the divine citizens in the Divine Land were sealed for 3 seconds. In that moment, the holy beings were astonished to find that the intimate connection between them and the universes had disappeared. 3 seconds was not a long time, but in a crucial moment, it could be absolutely lethal. The strength of the holy beings was often subtly balanced. If 2 holy beings fought against each other and Estelle used the power of her scepter to freeze them, the result would be very predictable. That was why many holy beings were afraid of Estelle and some tried to subdue her. But she had disappeared for 9 divine eras before recently emerging from the evolutionary universe, which had been a surprise to many people. Zen heard Master Evil out before turning to the mid-rank true god and asking, as you mentioned, Harold is really not afraid of the Zhang clan. Then why did the Zhang clan stir up trouble this time? The true god laughed and said, this is the key point. Most people only know superficial news. As far as I know, Harold has been working hard in the Everest Spirit Mountain for many years, but he hasn't taken complete control of it. The Zhang clan also knows this secret, so they launched an attack at a critical moment. In this case, Harold might die. Besides, the descendants of the Luo clan who follow him will also die. What? Zen was shocked. Seeing Zen's expression, the mid-rank true god shook his head and said, it's normal. Whoever fights against the Hall of Holy Beings usually faces a tragic end. Back then when the Luo clan was defeated, Harold should have chosen a different great clan. With his talent, he might have become a holy being. But look where he has ended up now. The mid-rank true god seemed to feel that it was a bit too much for him to have received so many divine might coins from Zen. He was still sighing with emotion about Harold when Zen turned around to leave. But before Zen took a step forward, he turned back and asked, how many points do I need to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain? Points needed for entering the Everest Spirit Mountain. You want to go in there? The mid-rank true god asked incredulously, laughing. Yes, Zen nodded. As a 6th grade forbidden land, the Everest Spirit Mountain requires more than 8,000 points. Mid-rank true gods like me can only wander around the mountain and don't dare to step in. The top-rank true gods can fly, but it's hard for them to survive in the mountain. You'd better pursue the godly way first, the mid-rank true god advised Zen. But Zen did not heed his advice. His father hadn't made any arrangements after sending him to the Divine Land. So Zen had to fight his way out. He didn't know what was waiting for him. This was a critical moment, when he had to decide which way to go. If he could meet Yan on the Everest Spirit Mountain, he would not hesitate to go there. Chapter 1823. Measures to save the ranking. In the spiritual heart hall of the floating island of Han Clan, over 100 important figures of the Han Clan gathered together. They were all sitting in a row in the capacious spiritual heart hall. In the middle sat the present-day leader of the Han Clan, Alfredo Han, while Joy, the demi-holy being of the Han Clan, sat next to him. She was sitting on a thick blanket, her elegant dress making her look like a royalty. She had a blank expression on her face as she gazed across the group of people. Everyone went silent as Alfredo stood up. He directed his gaze towards Joy and said, "Joy, it is your purple soul hall that is bringing us down this time. If we don't take the necessary measures, I am afraid the ranking of the floating island would drop further by 2 places." His voice was calm yet affirming. The whole place fell silent. As the demi-holy being of the Han clan, Joy was only second to the holy emperor of the Han clan. Although Alfredo Han was only at the consummation of true God realm, the holy beings of all powerful clans on the floating islands never interfered in the affairs on the islands. The holy emperor of the Han clan also trusted him and took his word for everything, never getting in his way unless it was a matter of life or death. Everyone in the Han clan knew how short-tempered and quick-witted Joy was. She had always been arrogant and rowdy. People wondered how Joy would react since Alfredo Han accused her in her face. "It's not a big deal if the ranking drops," Joy said calmly yet distractedly, much to everyone's surprise. Alfredo Han knew what Joy would say. "Joy, if the ranking of our floating island drops out of the top 10, not only we would lose a lot of opportunities but our warriors would also suffer great loss. Surely you can't be serious." He frowned, much to Joy's dismay. Alfredo Han always tolerated Joy in the past. He had given the Purple Soul Hall many privileges. But his patience was running out. He knew that the results would be catastrophic if the Han clan floating islands ranking dropped by further 2 places. For this particular matter, he had sought the Holy Emperor's guidance, who advised him to be stern, as far as Joy was concerned. Joy couldn't care less. "Nonetheless, we the Purple Soul Hall can't do anything about it. Our female warriors are not as talented as the warriors of the main Han clan, so expecting them to earn more points would be unrealistic," she proclaimed. Only the best of the best got recruited by the Han clan floating island. These warriors had to go through various difficult tests in order to get recruited by the Heavenly Han House. All of these warriors proved their worth in the Han clan's ancestral land. Joy on the other hand had a different criteria for recruitment. As long as one possessed the purple power body and could be acknowledged by the Godly Way tablet of the Purple Aura Godly Way, they could be recruited. After all, a small amount of people possessed a purple power body. Thus, it was impossible for the Purple Soul Hall to recruit talents the same way as the main Han clan did. Due to this, the strength of the Purple Soul Hall was relatively weak on the whole, having a little to no advantage in the arena of legends. Thus, the Purple Soul Hall was solely responsible for holding the main Han clan back. Joy was aware of this fact. She was strong herself, but she knew that she wasn't quite good at managing her disciples. She usually had a laissez-faire approach and spoiled the warriors in the Purple Soul Hall. But when the warriors really got out of control, she had to ask Madame Moon to punish the warriors who were holding back the ranking of the Han clan floating island. However, it wasn't the few proving godly warriors in the Purple Soul Hall that were bringing the ranking down, but rather the entire Purple Soul Hall. Therefore, the whole Purple Soul Hall needed to improve its performance. Alfredo Han already knew that Joy would try to buy her way out of this. "No, there's a way. Expel all the proving godly warriors from the Purple Soul Hall and 80% of the true gods that are ranked at the bottom. This way, we are confident to raise the total points of the whole floating island," he stated. The points of a floating island were the total points of all the warriors in the floating island that had fought in the arena of legends. If the disciples of the Purple Soul Hall were expelled and their jade tokens were cancelled, then the warriors of the Purple Soul Hall who were responsible for bringing the ranking down would be excluded. Thus, the points of the floating island would rise to a great extent. "Expel 80% of our Purple Soul Hall disciples," Joy exclaimed. Joy had expected that Alfredo Han would ask her to dispel her disciples. If it was the only way, she would compromise. After all, she was the demi-holy being of the Han clan. Whatever decision she had to take, it had to be for the betterment of the clan. But it was absolutely ridiculous to expel all the proving godly warriors and 80% of the true gods. She was thinking of expelling the bottom 10% of the disciples, not more than that. This strange request of Alfredo Han surprised her. This was equivalent to shutting down the Purple Soul Hall. Not only Joy, but the rest of the Han clan members present were shocked as well. Joy had the potential to become a holy being. If the Han clan had 2 holy beings, the status of Han clan would ultimately rise again. They felt as if Alfredo Han was doing her injustice. "I shall agree to no such thing," said Joy, shaking her head. Her graceful face darkened. "This is not my request." Alfredo Han continued, "This is what the Holy Emperor ordered. If you have any objection, you can talk to him. By the way, Holy Emperor is also very concerned about the possibility that our floating island's ranking might drop. He will never allow the ranking of our Han clan to drop out of the top 10. It's useless going to him. Unless you can improve the overall points of the Purple Soul Hall in 3 months. Every year, the rankings of the floating islands were calculated, and after 3 months, the points of all the floating islands on the time sea were tallied in order to decide their rankings. Even though Joy was a demi-holy being, it was quite impossible for her to completely transform the Purple Soul Hall. She was aware of the fact that demi-holy beings were not allowed to fight in the arena of legends. Therefore, no matter how powerful she was, she wouldn't be able to affect the points of the Purple Soul Hall. Is that what the Holy Emperor really said? Smiling ruefully at Alfredo Han, she took off from the ground, making her way towards the Holy Emperor of the Han clan. She knew she would never believe it unless she heard from the Holy Emperor himself. Master, isn't it too much to expel 80% of the disciples from the Purple Soul Hall? Asked a member of the Han clan, with deep concern in his voice. The warriors with purple power bodies in the Purple Soul Hall were quite rare and not easy to come by. They were the resources that Joy had accumulated over the years. Although, the warriors with purple power bodies were weak at first, but once they showed their true potential, they became quite powerful. Joy was a case in point. We can't wait that long, said Alfredo Han with a determined look on his face. The Holy Emperor has already made his new plan. We must stay within the top 10. Joy visited the Holy Emperor of the Han clan, and no one knew how the talk went. After she came back, she gathered all the disciples of the Purple Soul Hall. All the disciples gathered together in front of a huge platform inside the Purple Soul Hall. One of those disciples was Zen. There were about 30 to 40,000 female disciples present in the hall. Zen had heard about men who possessed the purple power body in the Purple Soul Hall before, but he had never seen one since he came here. Zen looked around and finally saw 2 men with the rare purple power body. They both were behaving like women, just like the eunuchs in the royal palace of the mortal world. All in all, Zen quite possibly was the only real man in the Purple Soul Hall. The door behind the platform was suddenly pushed wide open, much to everyone's surprise, and a group of top-ranked true gods emerged through it. Among them were Madame Moon and Mei. The top-ranked true gods covered both sides of the platform. A moment later, another woman walked through the door. With Zen's knowledge, Zen could clearly distinguish among the low rank, the mid-rank and the top-rank true gods. But the aura emitted from this woman was unfathomable and divine. Is this Joy? Zen asked in his mind. A demi-holy being's aura is quite extraordinary and overwhelming. However, as Zen complimented, Master Evil couldn't help but say, this woman is not Joy. Joy is a demi-holy being of Han clan, and her cultivation is only second to that of a holy being. This woman is actually a consummate true god, to be precise. Ah, I see. Zen felt a bit embarrassed by his lack of knowledge. True gods at the consummate level had perfected their own inner worlds, and only required to merge with the 9 stars to create their own universes. Their strength was indeed unparalleled. This woman must be Joy's eldest disciple, Master Evil speculated. Just as he finished speaking, another woman made her way through the door. She had an expression of distress on her face and the corners of her eyes were red as if she had cried. Her original charming and dignified face now revealed a hint of gloom. Chapter 1824. Win the battle. The moment the woman appeared, the atmosphere immediately shifted. The inner worlds within the Purple Soul Hall disciples' bodies started to tremble slightly. Everyone's, of course, except for Zen's. Joy had mastered the purple aura godly way so well that she had reached the level of Purple Sky Land, and thus, she could have a strong impact on the other purple power bodies. Once again, though, on everyone except Zen. His elixir field had no reaction at all. Silence befell the platform in a split second. A few well-informed female disciples had already received accurate news that, forced by Alfredo Han, the Purple Soul Hall had no other choice but to expel most of its disciples. For the disciples in the Holy Emperor City, though, this was good news. The disciples in the Holy Emperor City had long envied the Purple Soul Hall. And at the same time, they felt the overall situation was truly unfair. How come the women from the Purple Soul Hall had so many more resources despite their weaker strength? All afraid of Joy, no one dared say anything, though. Now that the head of the clan had ordered Joy to banish 80% of the female disciples from the Purple Soul Hall, they were quite content. Recently, when these female disciples went to the Holy Emperor City, they were mocked by the disciples there, by a higher or lower degree. When they had originally heard the news, no one could believe their own ears. Later, though, they were informed that it was true. In fact, their guess had been confirmed just by the expression on Joy's face. A few of the women looked as though they were on the verge of tears, their eyes hastily turning red. Some of them had already been staying in the Purple Soul Hall for many years. Although their strength hadn't increased much over this period of time, they had deep feelings of attachment to the people in the Purple Soul Hall. How could they ever feel willing to leave? Sadness spread throughout the group. It wasn't long before someone cried out loud. Even May and the others, who were on the platform, were affected by the scene, their expressions contorted and eyes red. It seems that most of you are already aware, said Joy. The majority of you have to leave in 3 months' time. The Holy Emperor stipulated a deadline of 3 months. By the end of the next 3 months, the jade tokens of most of these disciples would be cancelled on the floating island, and all these people would be discharged from the island. All of the proving godly warriors must leave. 80% of warriors at the true God realm will equally be expelled, Joy continued. Zen had heard of this in the past. He was quite disappointed to hear it again, especially coming from this demi-holy being directly. He had just entered the floating island and had not yet had the chance to show himself. Was he already being driven out? Learning that they weren't even going to give him a chance, Zen was obviously disappointed. If they were expelling the proving godly warriors who ranked in the bottom 80%, he would still have a great chance of joining the top 20%. However, the Han clan didn't have a good impression of proving godly warriors, and thus, they got rid of all the proving godly warriors in the Purple Soul Hall without hesitation. Beneath the capable and aggressive exterior, Joy was actually a soft woman on the interior. The expelling of the disciples from the Purple Soul Hall wouldn't have much of an impact on her status and interests, but she still felt heartbroken. She had already argued with the Holy Emperor about it. The Holy Emperor had a much clearer attitude. He didn't care what she would do, but he made it clear that keeping the floating island among the top 10 was the only way of keeping the female disciples of the Purple Soul Hall. Despite such, doing so was a near impossible task. How could she possibly enhance the Purple Soul Hall disciples' strength so greatly in such a short period of time? Just as everyone was immersed in sorrow, Zen suddenly took a deep breath and stood up. Zen was only a proving godly warrior. It was obviously inappropriate for him to stand up on such an occasion. Since he didn't have the purple power body, he felt out of place among these people. It took him a great deal of courage to take action. Master, I would like to know how I can help our Purple Soul Hall get through this calamity. Zen went all out and exclaimed loudly. Madame Moon immediately took a step forward with the intention to scold him, but Joy stretched out her hand and stopped her. She smiled amiably and instead asked, "Are you the person that May brought back from Han clan's ancestral land?" Although she couldn't remember his name, she at least remembered that he was from the Purple Soul Hall. Zen said, "Yes, my name is Thad Luo." Nodding her head, Joy continued, "Of course, there's a way. I've given it some thought. In your next 3 months here, each of you will have to win 4 consecutive battles in the Arena of Legends. Do you think that's possible?" If it had been that only one of them had to accomplish such a feat, it would have been possible. But it was unimaginable for each of 30,000 people to win 4 consecutive battles in the arena. Everyone listening heard their master's words too, and no one could help themselves but sigh heavily. Their hearts felt weighted. Right then, Zen continued to ask, "What if we succeed? Will everyone truly be allowed to stay in the Purple Soul Hall?" When Joy heard Zen's rhetorical question, a bitter smile spread across her face. Ignorant people are indeed fearless, she thought. He has no idea how difficult it will be. But she still nodded, theoretically speaking, yes. If so, why don't we fight for it? There are still 3 months left. Zen asked, his eyes shining with excitement, and his aggressive tone made it sound like he was blaming Joy. Although Zen was only a proving godly warrior, everyone felt their hearts beat a little faster as he spoke. He was right, this goal might be elusive, but it didn't mean that they had to give it up now. Let's give it a try. There's a very small chance, but I'm not willing to give it up. We won't be a drag on the Han clan. There's still time, and we can work hard. Zen's words quickly aroused resonance, and the women present couldn't help but become restless. Originally, everyone present felt trapped in sorrow, but because Zen had stood up and questioned them, the flames in the female warriors' hearts were ignited anew. Watching the hustle and bustle from above, Joy fixed her gaze on Zen. Her enchanting eyes were full of appreciation as she thought to herself, what a powerful little fellow. It wouldn't have been easy for any other ordinary person to encourage them from such low spirits. Zen showed no fear when confronting her. Never had a proving godly warrior dared to challenge a demi-holy being before on the floating island. Now that this had just occurred, it might actually be possible for the Purple Soul Hall to raise its rank and for its disciples to reach the same level as the other disciples of Han Clan in 3 months. This effect came directly from Zen's words. If you can't beat them, join them. Joy thought to herself. Then she said, I declare that the Purple Soul Hall has entered a special period, and it will give its disciples unlimited support throughout such a time. As expected, Joy's words caused another commotion among the warriors. Zen took his chance and slipped into the crowd. Only Joy could see what was going on in the crowd below. She also noticed Zen, and a trace of doubt appeared in the depths of horizon in her soul. Zen quietly found a jade wall of legends a few days later. Hundreds of people sat cross-legged beneath the jade wall and their bodies had completely fallen into the arena of legends. They were all focused on fighting, hoping to earn the most points in a terribly short period of time. Many people were quite disgusted with the arena of legends. After completing the 3 mandatory battles every month, they usually wouldn't set foot anywhere near it. But now, in order to stay, the disciples of the Purple Soul Hall had to raise their points and rank like never before in the arena of legends. Soon, the Jade Wall of Legends in the Purple Soul Hall was overcrowded with people. I won another battle today. That means I now have 2 consecutive wins. A woman exclaimed. Be careful, once you've won 2 wins in a row, the opponent you meet in the next round won't be nearly as weak. Her companion reminded her. Yes, I know, the victorious woman replied. Within the arena of legends, the rules were very fair. If you continued to win, the opponents you would encounter would become more and more powerful. Zen waited for a long moment before someone finally put away their jade token and withdrew from the arena. It was the woman who had just spoken. Her jade token demonstrated that she had won 2 battles. Normally, the person who had won 2 consecutive rounds would take a good rest before facing the 3rd battle. As soon as the woman stepped out, Zen placed his jade token into the groove. The woman was a low-rank true god, and she was still immersed in the joy of her 2 consecutive victories. She looked at the jade wall with a casual expression on her face. After all, Zen's cultivation base was a level lower than hers. In spite of her mood, when she saw that Thad had 26 consecutive wins, her mouth fell open so wide, her jaw could have touched the ground. Chapter 1825, Grover Mew. By now, Zen's consecutive wins had quietly increased to 26 rounds. And according to the rules of the arena, his point advantage was terrifying. Zen had only earned 1 point when he defeated Herman during the 1st round, but at the 26th round, he garnered 120 points. At this point, he accumulated more than 2,200 points. In a single round, he could only gain 3 to 6 points at most. The reason Zen could accumulate so many points at a time was that his wins were consistent all throughout. He was winning rounds in a row, and this gave him point advantage. Although the woman behind Zen was a low-rank true god, she had merely accumulated 800 points so far. Seeing Zen's undefeated record and the number of points he had made her feel lightheaded, as if she were in a dream. Initially, the woman planned to rest for the meantime, but she decided against it. She wanted to see with her own eyes how Zen had accumulated more than 2,000 points. Generally speaking, the points of a proving godly warrior would be 0 to 600, while the points of a low-rank true god would be 600 to 2,000, and the points of a mid-rank true god would be 2,000 to 8,000. For some reason, the points of a top-rank true god and a consummate true god were insanely high, and some consummate true gods could get as many as hundreds of thousands of points. There were some cases where they even reached millions. At times, after entering the arena of legends for the first time, many talents who came from wealthy clans on the floating islands were able to gain points through consecutive victories. Zen had won 26 consecutive wins, while his points totaled to those of a mid-rank true god. However, the points accumulated like this were quite faulty on a particular level. After winning consecutively, a warrior could backfire and lose most of their points if they lost in just one battle. Moreover, especially in the arena of legends, no one was ever guaranteed a victory. After a few rounds, Zen had no idea that his own score began to attract the attention of others. Right after he activated his jade token, he fell into the jade wall of legends. Gina, what are you looking at? Another woman noticed the woman lost in her tracks and asked her out of concern. The woman, Gina, pointed loosely at Zen. Her companion looked that way and was immediately shocked. Oh my goodness, she exclaimed. 26 consecutive wins, and more than 2,000 points. As a proving godly warrior, it was shocking to see that he had over 2,000 points. This was not something people saw very often, so it attracted a lot of attention. Moreover, it had not been long after Zen entered the Purple Soul Hall. The other warriors like him had only earned tens of points, but he was an exception. Her exclamation garnered more and more attention, and this drew people to gather around and focus on Zen's impossible records. 2,000 points. These are a lot, but what if they don't last? Said someone from the crowd. After all, everyone knew that nothing was a sure win in the arena of legends. He hasn't lost yet and his points are all because of his consecutive wins, another expressed. Once he loses a battle, he will lose most of his points, and he will be ranked pretty poorly. I'm curious about how many more battles he will win in a row. I'm sure the opponents at this point are the best of the best. Even though Zen's points were so high, everyone knew that it didn't matter because he wasn't ranked yet. His performance hadn't attracted any attention from others on the floating islands. According to the rules of the Arena of Legends, if a warrior kept winning, they couldn't be ranked yet. Because Zen was on a winning streak, he still wasn't listed on the ranks. The vast majority of people present didn't know that there was a proving godly warrior in the Purple Soul Hall, who had won 26 matches in a row, and had accumulated more than 2,000 points. Eventually, all the weaker godly warriors were ruled out and the competition remained amongst the strongest of the strong. However, with Zen's notable strength, it was almost impossible for any of the proving godly warriors to defeat him. Because of this, Zen's ball kept rolling as he won battles left and right. In the 27th round, people were anticipating with their eyes wide open. 26 consecutive wins, more than 2,000 points. If I win, my points will double for sure. A voice of a man came. Just then, a figure slowly descended from the sky and smiled faintly at Zen on the ground. Zen's opponent looked around 26 or 7 years old, with a pair of slender eyebrows and a pointed nose. He looked delicate, but his eyes gave off a tinge of malice and evil. Is your surname Mew? Are you from the Mew clan? In the previous competitions, Zen rarely got the information about his opponents. He was too intrigued not to ask this time. This young man was called Grover Mew. He had won 6 consecutive wins, and accumulated more than 200 points in total. Overall, you could say he was an excellent warrior, and Zen reckoned that he should be very important in the Mew clan as well. Humph, I'm curious, said Grover Mew. Since you have won 26 matches in a row, why don't you know me? He stared at Zen with a hint of displeasure in his eyes, as if Zen not knowing his identity was a mortal sin. I know now, Zen replied indifferently. Because of Murphy, he didn't really have a good impression on the Mew clan, but he knew not to show any of his knowledge here. His goal was just to keep winning and earn the most points that he could. Good to know, said Grover Mew along with a laugh. He floated elegantly towards Zen like a leaf caught in a gust of wind. With a gentle wave of his hands, 2 dim swords sprouted out of his hands and he pointed them at Zen's neck in a strange angle. After Zen's 20+ matches, his opponents were growing more and more creative. They had to do this to catch Zen off guard. Although these opponents hadn't mastered the godly way or condensed godly tile yet, they either had great martial arts skills, or the ability to exert the highest level of the internal momentum of the godly way. With their strength alone, they were far beyond the world lords that Zen had met in the evolutionary universe. When Zen had just entered the Divine Land, he had met some world lords who were also proving godly warriors. He was surprised to witness their weaknesses because they were unlike anything he had ever heard of before. However, the upper-ranked proving godly warriors gradually changed his impression as they proved to be a lot stronger than godly geniuses. Unfortunately for them, Zen's current strength had exceeded his past strength. No matter how powerful a proving godly warrior had come to be, it would always be nearly impossible for any of them to defeat him. Facing the 2 short swords that came at him from either side, one from the left and one from the right, Zen didn't even dodge them. Instead of avoiding the swords, he charged forward with all his might. Wow, you are confident. To me, it seems that you're quite ordinary, Grover Mew grinned maliciously. At the same time, the 2 small swords in his hands began to move in the air. The originally dull swords began to dazzle and sparkle with a silver light emitting from them. The silver light continued to cross each other, and it was aiming towards Zen's head. Silver Scales Slash was a skill created by Murphy himself. True gods didn't need this martial skill because all they had to use was the godly way. In essence, it was obvious that Murphy crafted this skill especially for Grover Mew. Murphy had even had Grover Mew's 2 short swords made for him, too. The left one was called White Fur, and the right one was called Silver Scales. These 2 swords were supreme primordial weapons tailor-made for Grover Mew. Did Murphy really love Grover Mew this much? Grover Mew had fought at least 1,000 battles in the Arena of Legends. Much like Zen, when he had just entered the arena, he was undefeated in battle. He had won 21 matches consecutively, and only after being defeated in the 22nd round had he been given an official rank. In the 1,000 battles of Grover Mew, no one could ever save themselves from the silver scales slash. Therefore, seeing that Zen didn't try to avoid the swords, he was immediately stunned. If that had seen enough of the world, he would have known the great power of his silver scales slash, and he wouldn't have just stood there and offered himself up for death. However, when the silver light that Grover Mew waved was 1 foot away from Zen, he finally jolted out of his place. His body tensed up as he moved backwards, avoiding the silver light. At the same time, he stretched out his hands all of a sudden and took the light by his own hands. Clank, 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 the white light sliced Zen's hands, making satisfying, crisp sounds. The swords were short, but extremely sharp. However, the silver scales slash just left a few white marks on Zen's hands while it was supposed to do more damage. As Zen blocked the rotation of the two short swords, he took advantage of the situation to grab Grover Mew's hands and stop him. Grover Mew hadn't expected Zen to break his move in such a simple manner. His jaw dropped and he had no clue what to do. At the same time, he also began to feel a huge surge of energy go through his fingers, up to his palms, and upwards his arms. Chapter 1826. An unexpected discovery. Zen didn't give Grover any time to think. His goal was to end this battle as quickly as possible. Grover's martial arts skill was very mysterious and there was no way Zen would be able to break it even if he came up with a clever method to do so. Not unless he went the other route. As the saying went, a man of great strength can defeat 10 men of martial arts. Basically, instead of brains, Zen could use his brute physical body in order to break his opponent's martial arts skill and then use his powerful strength to suppress them. He'd use his soul attack if necessary. With Zen's current strength, it was almost too unfair for the proving godly warriors to fight with him. In the evolutionary universe, Zen could barely fight against Pranav and others like him. Pranav was a low-rank true god but, because he was Murphy's disciple, his real strength was on par with mid-rank true gods. Given Zen's current strength, he would barely be able to contend against an ordinary mid-rank true god. At this stage, he had no motivation at all to challenge warriors above his level. The additional, cumulative points awarded for successive wins were more appealing to him and it seemed a wiser choice to obtain points from fights with proving godly warriors in the arena of legends. With his quick reflexes, Zen managed to grab Grover's hands and channeled his immense power towards his opponent. There was no resisting this attack and thus, Grover was brutally halved. The victory inevitably went to Zen. Despite his winning, Zen didn't think too much of it and quickly got out of the arena. However, the moment he turned he was frozen in shock by the dense crowd that had formed behind him. Hundreds of beauties stood staring at him. It seemed his match garnered quite a bit of attention and there were also numerous whispers from the crowd. 27 consecutive wins. His current opponents should be the most powerful proving godly warriors from the wealthy clans on the floating islands. His points are rising so fast. This battle gets him 200 points. In the eyes of these female disciples, Zen was somewhat of a freak. He didn't possess the purple power body yet he entered the purple soul hall. Back when the master was speaking he casually stepped up and encouraged everyone, and now, they all discovered his real strength which was extremely powerful. How long could he keep his winning streak? After finding out that his battle with Grover easily earned him 240 points, Zen immediately wondered just how many points he'd manage to get if he kept winning. Despite the gazes of so many beauties focused on him, Zen merely ignored them and continued to immerse himself in the arena of legends. In the floating islands, each noble clan had someone specially assigned to observe the changes on the Jade Wall of Legends. If one's ranking suddenly rose, the wealthy clans would know and they would then pay close attention to that certain someone. And the only way they could observe the warrior's performance was through the rankings on the Jade Wall of Legends. Ranked first among the proving godly warriors was Donovan Zhang of the Zhang clan, second was Elena of the Han clan, and third was the Menachem Lei of the Lei clan. Grover, who Zen fought just now, was ranked 6th. His defeat saw the reduction of his points and had him drop all the way to 12th place. If Zen had a ranking, he would have surpassed Donovan Zhang by now with his current points. However, the rules made it so that he did not appear in the rankings. He fought 27 battles in a row but had not lost once so he couldn't be listed. Zen was, effectively, an invisible person who continuously gathered points under the radar. Those defeated by him could only mutter their regrets in their hearts. These people also had a record of consecutive wins but now they could only bide their time and hope to defeat him someday. When that happened then his points would once again return to normal. However, Zen's winning streak was unstoppable. The young man would go on to win 3 more matches that very same day, making it a 31-match winning streak. His points were now at 3,000. With this, Zen was not far off from achieving his goal of obtaining 8,000 points, but that was if he continued winning. One lost battle and he would lose more than 90% of his points. As everyone tried their best to get points, the Purple Soul Hall announced the awards for those who got good rankings in the Arena of Legends. It was with great relief that Joy saw all the disciples of Purple Soul Hall work hard on gaining more points. She came up with a good idea to reward their efforts. As the demi-holy being of the Han clan for so many years now, she no doubt had a lot of good stuff in her inventory that she presented to the disciples. Zen took a look at her prizes and was quite impressed. There was an eye-catching, silver gossamer sword that he was particularly enamored with. According to Joy, the treasures would be distributed according to the number of points one had. The one who earned the most in 3 months would be the first to choose the award, then the second would choose the second award, and so on and so forth. If Zen kept up his winning streak, then he might be able to get first pick. After Joy presented her awards, the main Han clan also followed with their own. The ranking seemed very important to the Han clan. Since Joy took out some treasures from her personal collection as a way to motivate the disciples of Purple Soul Hall, the Han clan also saw it fit to offer rewards. Out of curiosity, Zen headed over to Holy Emperor City to see what exactly the Han clan offered. As he viewed the rewards, one particular treasure caught his attention. The wares offered by Joy were eye-catching. There was no doubt that the demi-holy being was rich, but her wealth was nothing compared to the main Han clan. It was worth noting that the Han clan was even willing to sacrifice Purple Soul Hall to enhance their ranking, so it was no surprise that they wouldn't even blink an eye when it came to offering up their own treasures. Over 30 supreme primordial weapons were lined up in the huge hall, all to serve as rewards for the promising warriors that raked up the most points. A mixture of shock and greed danced in the eyes of every true god that entered the hall. However, there were some who didn't even think that much of these supreme primordial weapons. Zen was one of these said people. Instead, he was more focused on what was on top of the hall. 5 treasures were lined up in a row up there: a jade sword, a pair of scissors, a mirror, a palm-sized tripod, and in the center, a bronze lion statue. These 5 treasures all emitted a peculiar power. Everyone could only stare up in awe from below. No wonder the Holy Emperor decided to disband the Purple Soul Hall. In order to enhance everyone's rankings, the Holy Emperor even took out the best treasures. Have the rules of the floating islands changed? The Han clan didn't pay that much attention to rankings before. The Crystalmore mirror. I've been dreaming of possessing such a treasure. I never expected the Han clan to offer it as a reward. Numerous mid-rank true gods, and even some top-rank true gods, salivated over the 5 treasures. However, it wasn't the 5 treasures that attracted Zen per se. No, he was instead focused on the bronze lion statue, rather, what it was placed on. Below the statue where it was prostrated was a huge, cyan plate. This plate obviously had a bit of history. Zen didn't recognize the material it was made of, but his inner world clearly showed a strong desire for it. This plate was actually made of that special mud. His failure of condensing a godly tile had always been a cause of concern for him. He got his chance back in 6 Bird and Divine City, but he had almost lost his life. It was just too difficult to find that kind of mud again. If he couldn't find any more of that special mud, then his cultivation level would be doomed at the World Lord level. It was understandable that he felt extremely depressed by this. Zen never thought he'd get another shot after finding this cyan plate here. He was extremely grateful that luck was in his favor. These 5 treasures were all superior to the 30-odd supreme primordial weapons below. The bronze lion statue also seemed to be the best reward out of the 5, which meant it was going to be extremely difficult to obtain. Sir, may I know the requirements to get this year's rewards? For example, the bronze lion statue at the top. Zen asked the mid-rank true god beside him. The mid-rank true god had been staring blankly at the treasures but was jolted back to reality by Zen's question. Bronze lion statue. Oh, you mean the golden beast statue. Those 5 treasures are only for the disciples of the main Han clan. Ordinary people don't have the qualifications to obtain them. Chapter 1827, The Reunion. The disciples of the Holy Emperor City knew that while the Han clan had shown them great sincerity, they couldn't grasp it. There was a distinction in rank and status between the disciples of the Han clan's floating island. According to their born status, those disciples could be divided into 4 grades. The disciples with other surnames were in the 4th grade, including Zen. But his situation was rather special. Those in the 3rd grade were members of the Han clan sub-branches. These children differed little from the disciples at the 4th grade in strength and talent, but because they had Han for a last name, they had to be taken care of by the Han clan. On average, the children of the main Han clan belonged to the 2nd grade. These kids were born and raised on the floating island. Unfortunately, their talent was mediocre at best and they lacked in strength, so their clan could only use certain resources to keep these children from being thrown out. They were clan members after all. Those in the 1st grade, of course, were the elite children of the Han clan. These people were considered the pride of their clan, meaning that the Han clan provided them with almost all their resources and efforts. As elites of the clan's next generation, they bore great expectations from their people. The elites included Pascal, who had been in the limelight for years, and Laquisha, who had just become a low-rank true god. Normally, these people seldom appeared in public, but they weren't invisible in the arena of legends. Compared to those in the same realm, they ranked extremely higher. Although this group of people made up only a fraction of the Han clan's population, their points could often determine the ranking of the floating island. The mid-rank true god explained it clearly: these 5 treasures were the best of the best, and the ordinary disciples of the island could only drool over them in the future. Those who could take the treasures out were destined to be the elite children of the Han clan. Whether or not you're qualified, you need a fair rule, right? Zen asked, his eyes crystal clear. He was well aware that in this world, there was no such thing as absolute fairness. There was a huge gap in strength between all the Han clan disciples. While on the surface, these treasures could be obtained by anyone, only a select few could even meet the conditions. The mid-rank true god glanced at Zen with utter indifference. He figured that as a proving godly warrior, Zen was overestimating his own strength, so he reported the Han clan's request. The 30 treasures below need you to add 15,000 points in 3 months, and the 5 treasures above need 50,000. As a proving godly warrior, if you want to get one of the 30 treasures below, you need to win about 5,000 battles. If it's one of the 5 above, you must win about 15,000 battles. He assumed that the number he gave would put a dent in Zen's expression. But Zen remained absolutely calm, giving no reaction but a slight nod. A proving godly warrior only got the most basic 3 points in a match. But so long as Zen won consecutively, the extra points from each would add up. If he worked hard enough, it was entirely possible for him to win 15,000 points. But his goal lay in one of the 5 most precious treasures, the golden beast statue. To be exact, he needed the huge plate below the statue. Still, it was difficult even for Zen to obtain 50,000 points in a short period of time. Just then, a crowd of people swarmed in from the side of the hall. They were escorted by guards clad in gold armor. It was clear that they were of high status. Look, Laquisha, look. This time, Father finally agreed to take out the precious golden beast statue, a girl that looked 17 or 18 years old exclaimed, bouncing up and down in excitement as she pointed to one of the hall's treasures. The voice sounds. Zen raised his brows and narrowed his eyes at the sound. He recognized the girl before him was Elena, whom he had met in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land. When he met her, she was still rather weak, but now she was one of the best proving godly warriors. Next to her was Laquisha. She looked much thinner than he had last seen her, with no trace of passion in her eyes. Instead, she looked rather melancholic. But in spite of that, she had become a true god. Although she was still at the low rank, her momentum was undoubtedly strong, giving Zen a feeling that she was even more powerful than Pranav, Marco, and Matteo. It was surprising to bump into them there, but Zen had no intention of coming forward. Zen had even asked Master Evil how to change his appearance for such situations before coming to the floating island. In the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land, the two helped him get rid of the doubts about his origin. They were well aware of his identity. If they exposed him rashly, he would find himself in deep trouble. It wasn't that he didn't believe in them. In actuality, they were very loyal. But Zen had to be extra cautious. Princess Royal is coming. Miscellaneous people, leave the hall. One of the guards announced. As he quietly sized up the guards, Zen couldn't find Kenan. Presumably, the group of guards in the Han clan always stayed in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land. The news of the Princess Royal's coming gave everyone a shock. These true gods in the hall knew that the girls were no ordinary folks, but never did they expect one of them to be the Han clan's Princess Royal. Let's go. There's nothing to see here. Look, the elites of Han clan have already ordered these treasures, said the mid-rank true god as he shook his head and patted Zen kindly on the shoulder, suggesting his leave. You're right, Zen replied, ready to go. But at that point, a woman's voice resounded, calling out, Thad. Wait. Hearing the voice, Zen paused in his steps, turning around to see a girl clad in a green dress beside Laquisha and Elena, the girl he met on the first day of the Heavenly Han House test. At the time, the old man who accompanied the young girl displayed a small sword, making everyone in the house fall silent, keeping secret the girl's identity. The muscles of Zen's face had shifted as he disguised himself the way Master Evil taught him. With a new appearance, he wasn't recognized by Laquisha and Elena, but the little girl in green did, having met him recently. The guards in charge of clearing the hall stopped right in front of Zen. Seeing him seemed to make the girl in green very happy as she turned and smiled at Elena. I told you, there was a powerful talent in the Heavenly Han House and he would be coming to our floating island sooner or later. I wasn't lying. With that, she ran towards Zen excitedly. Thad, now that you've passed the great test of the Heavenly Han House, why didn't anyone from the Holy Emperor's city pick you up? She asked him all of a sudden. Holding a high position in the Han clan came with access to inside information. She knew that the house had recommended Thad to the floating island and that he was to arrive. But she had no idea that something had happened. Because of the dispute between Yazid and Bentley, Zen was sent to the Purple Soul Hall in the end. So the girl in green had come to the Holy Emperor's city several times to investigate, getting no news that Thad had entered the city. It was rather odd, in her opinion. She was on good terms with Elena and Laquisha, but the elites of the Han clan weren't only good friends, they were also great competitors. When Elena and Laquisha encountered Zen in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land, they came across a series of adventures. When the two girls returned to the floating island, they told the girl in green about the story. She had been getting an earful about Zen's stories, seizing the pristine life vitality, single-handedly fighting off a group of top-level elites from big clans of floating islands. A twinge of envy came when she heard the tales, for the two girls who met such a strange person in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land. She herself had grown very curious about the stranger. After returning to the Han clan's ancestral land, the girl in green met a genius named Thad Luo. Judging from his strength, she figured that even the big clans, elites couldn't measure up to him. The girl was barely 16, even younger than Elena, but her great competitiveness and ego had her bragging about Zen when she came back. Chapter 1828, Suspicion. Ever since Elena and Laquisha had returned from the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land, they'd both been quite worried about Zen. What was more, Laquisha had even tried to use her connections with the Zhang clan in order to obtain a little information concerning the evolutionary universe. Had this occurred in the past, the chances were she'd have succeeded. She did benefit from a high position in her clan, after all. It was easy for the Holy Emperor's eldest daughter to get information here and there from the Zhang clan. This time, it was another story though. She gained nothing at all. Because of Harold and his group, the Zhang clan had equally lost control of the evolutionary universe. As a result, she had no choice but to give up. There was no way she could travel to the evolutionary universe personally. Her father would never agree or allow such to happen. Earlier though, upon hearing Kelsey provide news about Thad, she began to feel rather curious. As of the moment the Luo clan had been exterminated, less and less talents with Luo as their family name existed. Thus, it was kind of strange that a talent surnamed Luo had suddenly appeared. Moreover, if Zen really did come to the Divine Land, there was no way he'd actually use his real name. On second thought though, the Divine Land really was very vast. Maybe Zen happened to arrive in the Han clan's ancestral land and successfully passed the Heavenly Han House test. Maybe he happened to meet Kelsey in the Heavenly Han House, and Kelsey just happened to show off in front of Laquisha. And perhaps, Zen really was that person, only using an alias. Was that even possible? The probability of such an occurrence was very slim, almost negligible. After figuring this out though, Laquisha didn't pay much attention to it. As for the young girl named Kelsey, she went out on a whim and had a strong desire to win. In the past, she had searched high and low in the Holy Emperor's city on several occasions for information about Thad, but to no avail. Ultimately, she gave up. Nevertheless, today, she, Laquisha and Elena had all come to observe the rewards distributed by their father there, and they had happened to encounter Thad. From her standpoint, Laquisha looked Zen up and down secretly. Although Zen looked totally different now and even his aura had become stronger than in the past, Laquisha still felt like she recognized him. This feeling confused her deeply, for it was the first time they had ever met. Why did he give her such a familiar feeling? I didn't join the Holy Emperor's city, Zen stated, shaking his head in negation. I joined the Purple Soul Hall. What? Kelsey exclaimed. You joined the Purple Soul Hall? The corners of Kelsey's mouth twitched slightly and a strange smile spread on her lips. Why did you join the Purple Soul Hall instead? From what I've heard, even the very few men in the Purple Soul Hall have womanly ways. Elena, who was standing not far away from them, suddenly bounced toward them. She didn't look much older than Kelsey, and she showed just as much interest in the whole Thad thing as Kelsey did. Kelsey, is this the talent surnamed Luo that you mentioned earlier? He doesn't have the purple power body, right? How did he even join the Purple Soul Hall? Upon seeing the two girls giggling away in front of him, Zen said helplessly, "It's not funny and this isn't a joke. Although I don't have the purple power body, I was recognized by the purple or a godly way." He reached out his hand and flicked his index finger. A bright ray of purple mist began to surround him instantly, and there was fine internal momentum within it. LaQuisha was watching this scene play out from a short distance away and her eyes opened wide with surprise. The purple or a godly way is all about feminine aura. Only those who have controlled the latter can actually master this technique with skill. You can't comprehend this thing at all, and yet you've specifically managed to comprehend the internal momentum contained in the purple or a godly way. Tell us, how did you do that? She asked coldly. Over the years, LaQuisha had, like many others, become more mature and melancholic, as well as more imposing as a princess. Her question to Zen was asked in a condescending tone, if only by force of habit. "I'm sorry that I can't tell you," Zen promptly refused without a second's hesitation. LaQuisha said nothing in return, but the guard's face fell next to her, his expression emotionless. The guard was a top-ranked true god. He was LaQuisha's bodyguard and also enjoyed a high status in the Han clan. When he heard Zen's answer, he shouted coldly, "How dare you refuse to answer the princess's question?" In spite of the fact that the guard before him was a top-ranked true god and that he was in an aggressive mood, Zen calmly asked, "I may have joined the Han clan's floating island, but that doesn't mean I'm a slave here, right?" What Zen said was true, of course. In reality, the wealthy clans of the various floating islands didn't have much restrictions on their disciples and those with different surnames. However, in order to play the clans up, a large number of disciples with different surnames were usually quite courteous. In fact, they even fawned on their elders in hopes of making them happy and thus benefiting from certain opportunities. And yet, this was what Zen cared about the least. For him, the Han clan's floating island was nothing more than a mere passageway. In order to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain, 8,000 points were needed and he would accumulate them little by little. Zen wanted to succeed on his own and refused to ask anyone else for help. As the top-ranked true god listened to Zen speak, he only grew even more infuriated. "How dare you?" he roared. "That's enough, Grant," LaQuisha said while keeping her voice under control. And with LaQuisha's words, the top-ranked true god now known as Grant shut his mouth. Before retreating off to the side, Grant gave Zen a ferocious stare, which was so intense that it was almost as though he had daggers in his eyes. On the other hand, as LaQuisha listened to Zen's answers, the puzzled expression on her face gradually disappeared. The confusion in her heart, though, couldn't help but grow bigger and stronger by the minute. In both appearance and tone of voice, the fellow standing before her truly was completely different from Zen. That said though, his character and personality were nearly the exact same. She might not be capable of seeing flaws, but her unique intuition was constantly guiding her, and usually, in the right direction. A little while ago, she had only felt somewhat strange because Zen's aura made her feel familiar. Now though, she had already tried proving that Thad was Zen, and Zen was only pretending that he didn't know who they were. With that thought in mind, a cunning look appeared in her eyes. She turned to Elena and asked, "Elena, didn't Kelsey say that there existed a proving godly warrior that was even stronger than you?" Elena's talent was even greater than that of LaQuisha. Although she was only a proving godly warrior at the moment, she had already ranked second among the proving godly warriors in the arena of legends, next to Donovan from the Zhang clan. Elena was nothing short of impressive. Since the floating islands represented the divine land's highest level, it could be said that Elena, who ranked second among the proving godly warriors in the divine land, had extraordinary talent. It was true that Kelsey had said that in the past, but she was reckless and less sensitive than LaQuisha. She had already forgotten what she had said, and Elena didn't see any special thing in Thad. In other words, she hadn't connected Zen and Thad together whatsoever. But as LaQuisha reminded her, she remembered immediately, clapping her hands together at once as the thought flashed in her mind. "Oh, yeah, that's right. Kelsey, didn't you brag about this guy's strength every day a while back? You said he was stronger than me, huh? Thad, why don't we compete, right here, right now? Come on, hurry up. Let's do it." Elena was the type of person who always did whatever she pleased. And right now, her full intention was to compete with Zen. Unfortunately for her, had she known that Thad was Zen, she would have never made such a silly choice. Although she was somewhat reckless, she was also very clever. Once LaQuisha and she had come back, they took the time to secretly analyze Zen's background, and even read up on a little history that was hard for regular warriors to get their hands on. The more they knew, the more astonished they became. It was at that point that they decided to keep this secret for themselves. Elena had already been slightly aware about Zen's background and origin. Therefore, she knew very well that she was no match for him. Now though, she wasn't thinking too clearly. Just a few seconds ago, instigated by LaQuisha, she had offered to challenge Thad. At least, while they competed, LaQuisha would be capable of using the time to retrieve more information and clues on Thad. Zen looked at LaQuisha helplessly. As long as he had to deal with LaQuisha and Elena, nothing good would happen. Chapter 1829, Playboys from Wealthy Clans. If he really fought with Elena, he must learn to hide his moves, or he would be easily seen through. But LaQuisha was thinking the same as Zen. She knew that Zen's strength far exceeded the strengths of people at the same level as him, but he didn't have as many tricks. Now, Elena was much stronger than before, so she thought that it would be difficult for Zen to hide his tricks before her. These thoughts wreaked havoc in Zen's and LaQuisha's minds. But the battle between Zen and Elena did not start. Because at this moment, the door on the other side of the hall was pushed open with a loud bang. More than 100 people rushed into the hall. They weren't very strong, but they exuded an extraordinary aura. Some of these people were proving godly warriors, and the others were low-rank true gods. Most of them were very young. While the proving godly warriors were only 16 or 17 years old, the low-rank true gods were only in their early 20s. They were all dressed informally, but their clothes were all very fancy. Some had cyan-winged phoenixes embroidered on their shoulders, while some had gold dragons on their sleeves. They must belong to influential clans. In addition to these warriors, there were 4 top-ranked true gods, who were hiding their aura and keeping a low profile. What was more, they were only the bodyguards of some of these young people. No outsider is allowed to enter this place. Grant frowned and stepped up to stand before them. He said, "It doesn't matter who you are. Please get out." Since the Princess Royal had come here, all the others on the Han clan's floating island must avoid being seen. No resistance was allowed. The 15-year-old man at the front shook his head and laughed as he said, "What? I can't hear you. This guy told us to get out. Ha ha, can you hear me now?" Another young man in blue whispered loudly to the young man in front of him. "Idiot off. I think I'm going to be deaf. Lower your voice. The 2 princesses of the Han clan are here today. Don't embarrass Lang." Now that these young people had stirred up trouble, the quiet hall had suddenly descended into a mess. Grant's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and made to attack. As a top-ranked true god, dealing with these juniors was easy for Grant. But he had barely made a move when 2 top-ranked true gods blocked his path. "Hey buddy, you'd better stay out of young people's businesses," one of them whispered threateningly to Grant. "I just want to protect my princesses," Grant said flatly. "Our young master can't be hurt either. Don't force us to do anything," the man continued, his voice low. "Leave the matter to them. If they make a scene, there will be people above them to solve it. Anyone who tries to get involved will only be smashed to pieces. Do you understand what I'm saying?" These top-ranked true gods had always been the bodyguards around the core disciples of the wealthy clans. They were already familiar with the rules. They knew that they couldn't be too responsible for their behaviors, or they would suffer from their own actions. The floating islands above the time sea were the core of power. If accidentally involved, ordinary people would be torn to pieces. Even top-ranked true gods were no exception. Grant had just been transferred from the Holy Emperor City to the Spiritual Heart Hall, so he didn't know the rules. He just wanted to fulfill his duty and ensure LaQuisha's and Elena's safety. He couldn't bear to see these playboys from all the wealthy clans rushing in like nobody was watching them. But the man's words calmed him down. As long as these people didn't move towards the princesses, Grant would not act rashly. Although Grant was a top-ranked true god, he couldn't afford to offend the 100 people present. Noticing that the others weren't showing them any respect, Elena, LaQuisha and Kelsey were angry. "Why are you here?" LaQuisha asked with a frown. "Don't treat us as outsiders. You and Lang are engaged. You're his fiancé. I don't think it's a big deal for him to see his wife. Don't you agree with me?" A young bald man chuckled as he spoke. LaQuisha's expression hardened at this. She couldn't help but glance at Thad. Disappointment crushed her heart as she saw Zen's stiff expression. Before anyone could react, the mass of people parted to reveal a handsome man slowly making his way to the front of the crowd. He smiled at her and said, "Laquisha. Nice to meet you again." This was Langston Lang, also known as Lang. The Lang clan was ranked fourth among all the wealthy clans of the floating islands. Even among those in the top 10, the Lang clan was one of the biggest and most powerful clans. And even in the divine land outside the time sea, the surname, Lang, alone could make anyone feel inferior. The Han and the Qin clans used to be on good terms with each other, their clan members often marrying each other. So both clans had children and disciples in each other's clans. But by this time, the relationship between the Qin clan and the Han clan had started to crack. Rumor was that if the Qin clan wanted to be among the top 10 clans, they had to remove the Hans from the list. But the Han clan had no intention of giving up their ranking. As a result, the relationship between the two clans, which used to be linked by marriage, had now dropped to freezing point. The other evidence was the marriage of Laquisha. The Holy Emperor of the Han clan had many children, but most of them were men. It wasn't until this divine era that he finally had the luck to beget two daughters, Laquisha and Elena, on both of whom the Holy Emperor obviously doted. Since they were the biological daughters of the Holy Emperor, they enjoyed a high status in the Han clan. Some had thought that the Holy Emperor of the Han clan would marry off his eldest daughter, Laquisha, to someone in the Qin clan. However, as their relationship fell apart, Laquisha became engaged to Langston, of the Lang clan. Everyone was focused on the relationship between the Han clan and the Lang clan as well as the possible problems that could crop up in the future. Above the time sea, every move of the wealthy clans remained mysterious. They were thus trying to guess the underhanded meaning of the marriage between the Lang clan and the Han clan. But despite being the bride, Laquisha was neglected the most. No one cared about what she was thinking, or her talent, or her strength. They only knew her value and how she could be an advantage to them. And Laquisha didn't attend the engagement. She then went to her father and made a scene. Despite that, her father had her grounded. According to the Holy Emperor of the Han clan, Langston was the best man to marry Laquisha and she was just creating trouble for nothing. People like Laquisha weren't rare in the wealthy clans, but no one could disobey an order of a holy being. She was not immortal, so she couldn't just run away with the one she loved. Although the divine land was large, how could Laquisha avoid being chased by a holy being? They all thought that Laquisha would eventually compromise with her father after struggling for a while. Langston was an outstanding young man. In the arena of legends, he had ranked among the top 5 mid-ranked true gods, and had never fallen out in all these years. Langston was the youngest son of the holy being of the Lang clan. His status was no worse than that of Laquisha and it could be said that they were perfectly matched. Langston greeted her warmly, but Laquisha was still pulling a long face and was avoiding looking at him. As he watched Laquisha helplessly, Langston wanted to walk over to her. But Elena and Kelsey were staring coldly at him from either side of Laquisha. "Stay away from her, idiot off." Although these two girls constantly fought with each other, they were very united when it came to guarding Laquisha against him. "You two little girls, get out of the way. The girls of the Han clan are really beautiful. The two girls might become more beautiful than their sister when they grow up. You can also ask your father to come here to propose marriage, can't you?" The playboys were straightforward and even began to comment on Elena and Kelsey. They didn't dither before saying something harsh. Even though Elena looked weak and feeble, she was tough, just like her mother. Their words brought her to the point of explosion, her round eyes widening as two blood shadows emerged from her hands. The two blood shadows dragged in her hands like two shapeless knives, and she jabbed them towards one of the playboys. She intended to kill them by using all her strength. Chapter 1830, Harassment. The rich clans had introduced many rules and regulations among them. Some rules were written on the ruling slate, while some on the Hall of Holy Beings. Some were even the rules of the various rich clans and the sect rules. There was also a rule among the young men from the rich clans. The top-ranked true god said to Grant, "Keep one thing in mind. No matter what you do to protect the princesses of the Han clan, ensure you do not displease these children from the noble clans. Else you will be punished severely. If these warriors begin to fight with each other, you better stay away and watch from a distance. Don't involve in their fighting." It was a set rule that servants were not allowed to engage in fights among the core disciples of the rich clans. Elena was all set to challenge Zen, who was appreciated for his remarkable talent by Kelsey. However, she was now in a towering rage and rushed towards the nearest proving godly warrior. To make matters worse, she had clearly heard the warrior make some crude remarks with lustful eyes. She vehemently despised such people, and to top it, she was ranked second among all the proving godly warriors. Hiss. The two rays of red light elongated and transformed into a mesmerizing blood-red pattern. It charged towards the reckless proving godly warrior. The pattern exuded an aura of murderous intent, creating an illusion of situating in the abyss demon region. No matter where one stood, they would be affected by the surging malicious aura. The top-rank true gods and mid-rank true gods seemed to be unaware about the turn of events. They were not affected by this aura. But some of the low-rank true gods felt their hearts suddenly race. Their blood pumped so much adrenaline that they were filled with an intention to kill others. The proving godly warrior, Egbert Joe, who was about to be covered by the blood-red pattern, was the core disciple of the Joe clan. The Joe clan's floating island was only ranked in the middle on the time sea. It could be regarded as a middle-level island, but it was still guarded by a holy being. Although this clan did not showcase any extraordinary talent, they were socially active and were on good terms with other clans. It also maintained its own position and rank in the past few years. Egbert Joe never realized that the younger daughter of the Holy Emperor of the Han clan was so stubborn and reckless that she was just randomly going to kill him for no fault of his. The disciples from rich clans on the floating islands were all bossy and cruel by nature, but it was the first time that Egbert Joe had met such a fierce and domineering woman. He was not prepared for such kind of behavior. Even if Egbert Joe managed to maintain his composure, he was still no match compared to Elena. Elena was ranked second among the proving godly warriors, while Egbert Joe was ranked beyond 80th. The two of them had confronted each other in the arena of legends twice, but Egbert Joe lost in a very short period of time during each round. Warriors would not really die in the arena of legends, so Egbert Joe could still hang on there. Now the blood-red pattern rushed towards him with a murderous intent, making him so scared that he couldn't help but shout out for help. Zen stood on the other side and watched the scene indifferently. He had already made the decision. Since he did not intend to show up in the first place, he would not make a move to interfere. Zen didn't care what the disciples from the rich clans were going to do or how they would stop. It had nothing to do with him. He didn't even bother to watch their attitude towards the current situation. If Zen's father was still alive, and the Luo clan was not destroyed, Zen might have also grown up among the rich clans and become a member of these noble clan children. But there was no point mulling over events he could not control. He was not a member of this group. From the moment he was born, he was destined to fulfill the mission that was more substantial than that of these noble clan children. If Egbert Joe died here, it would bring great trouble to the Han clan. The Joe clan wasn't even worth mentioning in terms of the ranking, but with the friendly relationships with many other wealthy and influential clans, it would eventually bring trouble to the Han clan. However, Elena did not think much on those lines. Ever since she had made great achievements in the arena of legends, she had never been bullied like this by her peers. However, before Elena's blood-red pattern could surround Egbert Joe, a short figure appeared unexpectedly. He was very flexible, and he had a silver flute in his hand. He raised the flute slightly, and a ball of silver light was formed and rolled towards the blood-red pattern. The blood-red pattern contained an immense killing power. But the silver light seemed even more powerful because it immediately coated the blood-red pattern, making it look like fluid mercury. The original blood-red mark had now turned into a silver-colored mark, totally exiting from Elena's control. Egbert Joe was immensely relieved to have survived this situation by a hair's breadth. It's been only a few days since the last time we met. But you have great potential by reaching such a high level. I think you are now capable of challenging an ordinary true god. The man holding the silver flute said with a smile. He was Kenan Lu from the Lu clan, and had reached the cultivation base of a true god. It was not appropriate for him to fight against Elena now, as he was much powerful than Elena. The Lu clan's floating island ranked the last among all of the islands. The clan members were always on their toes, for they felt crisis might befall on them anytime. The clan would be qualified to be called a big clan only when its island was above the time sea. Till date the Lu clan's foundation was still unstable. If the Lu clan continued to fall behind other clans, its floating island would drop into the time sea, and its position would be replaced by another powerful clan. That was why, in the Divine Land, there were countless first-tier clans who were eyeing the Lu clan's floating island to succumb. Once the Lu clan was eliminated, other first-tier clans would be ready to compete for the vacant position. Although the Lu clan's floating island ranked at the bottom, Kenan Lu, the low-ranked true god, holding the silver flute, possessed immense strength and was ranked in the top 50 in the arena of legends. He was among the top 50 low-ranked true gods, while Elena was just ranked second among the proving godly warriors. The difference in strength between them was too wide. Hence Elena was no match for Qinan Lu. By virtue of his advantage in cultivation base, Qinan Lu could easily stop Elena's attack. Many people would have chosen to prevent from being in this situation, if they were in Qinan Lu's position. However, Qinan Lu became more interested in dealing with Elena today. After waving the flute, he smiled arrogantly and said, "I've heard so much about you. Well, today I'm going to compete with you." As soon as he finished speaking, he slightly shook the silver flute in his hand, and a crisp whistling sound came out from it. It contained the soul method in it, which could make the soul go numb for an instant. Suddenly, Elena felt that her spiritual sense went numb and blank. She just could not feel or think anymore. It seemed like she was rooted to her place, without being able to move her limbs. By the time she could understand the situation, Qinan Lu had already placed his hand on her shoulder. He said in a low voice, "A wonderful night filled with the pleasant sound of a phoenix flute." Before he could finish chanting, Elena came to her senses. There was bloody mist emitting from her body, and her innocent face transformed itself into a fierce one. All this while, Laquisha was upset. Neither did she want to see Elena killing innocent people here, nor did she want to see her being molested by the disciple from a rich clan. However, as she was about to help Elena, Langston, her fiancé, stood in front of her. Langston said coldly, "Elena is a little bad-tempered, and it's not a bad thing for her to spar with Qinan. Qinan has the sense of propriety and might drive some sense into her." Hearing this, Laquisha felt outraged. Spar with him? She knew that all of those noble clan disciples were not only powerful, but also eloquent. She just said coldly, "Get out of my way." Langston shook his head and smiled. "You are not supposed to talk to me with that tone, but I still find it appealing," he uttered. Langston was not afraid of Laquisha's counterattack as he said those words. After all, he was the top mid-rank true god, while Laquisha had just mastered the godly way. Laquisha was no match for him. Since Langston stood in front of Laquisha, it was impossible for the latter to make any move. Grant, who was in the hall, was now sweating profusely. He was the guard responsible for protecting both Laquisha and Elena. Faced with the current dilemma, he felt helpless. What should he do? What if anything untoward happened to the two sisters of the Han clan? He knew he would be in a very grave situation if he failed to protect them. "Humph! How dare you bully my sister?" Kelsey shouted angrily when she saw that Qinan Lu was bullying Elena with the silver flute. But Kelsey's strength was inferior to that of Elena. It was an easy job for Qinan Lu to deal with the two girls. He enveloped both of them in the silver light that spread from his silver flute. All this while, he was stroking Elena's face from time to time, taking advantage of her position under the flute's spell. When the other rich clan disciples witnessed this scene, they merely started laughing. They showed no intention to prevent Qinan Lu, and even made fun of Elena. Zen had never expected that the situation in the hall would create such a turn of events. Earlier he had planned to leave without anyone's notice, but now, he realized it would be difficult to do so. He silently shook his head and walked towards Elena. Chapter 1831, Driven Mad. The rich playboys of the wealthy clans were quite used to this kind of situations. In fact, they meant no harm, as they only thought of it as a game. However, this game would prove to be quite costly to the three sisters of the Han clan. The Han clan was meant to be riding on the Leng clan's coattails. Although the playboys mostly kept it to themselves, they despised the Han clan in their hearts. They also had a tendency to create troublesome situations for others. They were quite keen on the politics of the floating islands as well. They were aware of their actions and knew whom to avoid when they stirred trouble. The playboys were unaware of Zen standing there. He wouldn't have caught their attention even if he was a top-ranked true god, let alone a proving godly warrior. Zen kept his head down and started walking towards them. Since Zen was on the floating island, he didn't want to cause any trouble. He had no one to lean on and was weak. Provoking these guys didn't seem like a good idea as he could jeopardize everyone knowing his true identity. However, he couldn't just stand there and watch Elena getting bullied. How about that? When he was only 7 or 8 feet away from Elena, a great force made way through his feet and exploded. Zen increased his strength in order to make up for the loss in speed. In the evolutionary universe, when everyone was flying back and forth, this was not much of an advantage, but in the divine land, it was extremely valuable and effective. Due to that turbulent force, Zen's speed increased in an instant. His body started to lean forward. Few pieces of ice were condensed in his left hand, and a raging flame was seen in his right hand. If Zen used the great weighty sword combined with the emotion-closing godly way, he would have been able to even kill Qinan. However, the consequences would be quite severe once his emotion-closing godly way was exposed. Fortunately, Zen had stored a lot of godly ways through Infinity Ruler. Although he was unable to cultivate anything during this time, he was also constantly thinking about the cooperation between these godly ways. He suddenly started waving his left hand just as he became fast. The air was filled by sudden swishing sounds. The ice cones in his left hand suddenly flew towards Keenan. As Zen started to attack, he finally attracted the attention of people that were present there. As Zen was only a proving godly warrior, the people over there didn't take him much seriously. After all, Elena was the strongest among the proving godly warriors, but she wouldn't have been able to do much against Keenan. Where is this guy from? I just noticed him. People started to wonder. I don't know, maybe he is a direct disciple of the Han clan. Maybe he wants to take a stand alongside Elena. He used two godly ways at once. That's interesting, someone exclaimed. They thought low, even of those who were direct disciples of the Han clan. The thought never crossed their mind that Zen was only an outer disciple. Clank, 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 Keenan accurately caught all the sharp ice cones that Zen had thrown on his flute. His face grew darker as he said, "How dare you attack me? Do you wish to die?" He didn't take Zen as an opponent, but Zen had indeed disturbed the ambiance of the place. However, just as he was about to remove the ice cones off the silver flute, the corners of Zen's mouth curled up. Swoosh, 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 black and purple flames erupted from the ice cones, followed by a black smoke with a hideous smell. The hideous stench that filled the air was like that of the poison. Zen himself created that nameless flame from the elementary fire. It took a long time to cultivate the elementary fire godly way. And it needed some practice and a few finishing touches to create one's own fire. The dark purple nameless fire was only a semi-finished fire, and it did not have much power in it. However, it looked quite frightening. When smelling the pungent odor of the thick smoke, everyone thought it was a toxic fire. Keenan's expression changed when he saw the black smoke. He waved the silver flute, and spun a strong wind from it, intending to blow out the flames and the black smoke on the flute. Zen didn't stop moving either. A five-colored light flashed gently in his hand and activated the earth law of the five elements godly way. Then he punched the ground hard. Smash! A huge mud hand suddenly sprang out from under Keenan's feet and grasped him firmly. Keenan felt dizzy. He didn't expect Zen to exert so many methods in the blink of an eye. These methods weren't very powerful, but were still quite excruciating. Who is he? He has used 3 types of godly ways in a short amount of time. He's not experienced in cultivating these godly ways. He's just very skilled at using them. It is quite time-consuming to cultivate several kinds of godly ways at the same time. And he has bitten more than he can chew, people exclaimed. After becoming true gods, people did cultivate more than one kind of godly way, but they mostly practiced a single godly way and the other 1 or 2 were just subsidiaries. But people were surprised to see Zen use 3 kinds of godly ways at the same time. Oh, he's already using the 4th godly way. Wow, it's the purple aura godly way. He's not a woman. While they were gossiping, wisps of purple mist spread out and transformed into purple birds which then attacked Keenan. It was the incarnation in the purple aura godly way. Being held captive by the mud hand and dealing with the large group of purple birds at the same time stunned Keenan. He didn't know what to do. Laquisha and Langston were dumbfounded by the unexpected fold of events. Langston was one of the most powerful warriors present in this group, and his eyes were fixed on Zen. This guy is unique. If he can unite several godly ways together, he could have a miraculous effect. Some of the mighty warriors of the divine land had truly grasped the way to perfectly combine several types of godly ways, but that required an extremely thorough comprehension and understanding of the godly ways. Langston thought that Zen was just playing petty tricks as he was just a proving godly warrior. On the other hand, Laquisha was a bit confused. She didn't expect Thad to constantly change his godly ways as soon as he attacked. Such a way dealing with the enemy was quite amazing. This man is so powerful that he can unleash several godly ways to this point with such an ordinary cultivation level. He is quite unique, but isn't he Zen? Laquisha's heart was filled with sorrow. She couldn't figure out that whether Thad was actually Zen. If he wasn't Zen, he had nothing to do with her no matter how powerful he was. Boom, 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 the sky was filled with sudden booming noise. The purple birds which contained the internal momentum surrounded Keenan and exploded simultaneously. At the same time, some snowflakes drifted. The snowflakes covered the whole area, and suddenly it became cold there. Snow godly way, this is the 6th godly way, someone exclaimed. This fellow is quite mysterious. I know plenty extraordinary people, but I never heard of this person in the Han clan before. The playboys from the wealthy clans present were the most powerful and talented ones in the same realm. In their opinion, cultivating 3 or 4 kinds of godly ways was way too much work. And it would be a queer if they could display 5 or 6 kinds of godly ways casually. Moreover, this guy seemed to have cultivated much more godly ways than he had displayed. Even though Keenan had been cornered by Zen, the onlookers had no intention of helping him. They were interested in seeing what Zen would do next. Suddenly Elena intervened and stopped Zen in his tracks. She asked Zen to let her kill Keenan. Elena was not a soft-hearted person. Her cultivation base had restrained her strength, but she wasn't afraid of killing Keenan. Elena hated Keenan ever since she was molested by him. She didn't want to stand by watching idly as Keenan was getting killed. She wanted to be the one to kill him herself. "Let me kill him," Elena exclaimed. Keenan felt quite dizzy and furious at the same time. Whenever he tried to get out of this difficult situation, Zen would come up with something new. Keenan raised the silver flute in his hand and shoved it into the ground. Buzz! A streak of silver light suddenly flashed from the upper end of the silver flute which stunned the spectators. "This isn't good. Keenan is mad now," one said. "Everyone, move back quickly." Everyone rushed back to safety when they saw this. Chapter 1832, The Lesson. Although this group of people made quite a havoc in the Han clan's territory, they were also well aware of what was more important. It was nothing more than a basic prank. At first, when Keenan had started picking on Elena and Kelsey, he didn't have any intentions of hurting anyone. When Zen stepped in, though, things became a little more subtle. Although the Lu clan's floating island didn't rank high, it was still one of the richest and most powerful clans. It was a great shame that Keenan had been fooled by a proving godly warrior using different godly ways. If they were outside of the time sea, this might not have been a problem, as there was such a long distance between the wealthy clans. But right now, these huge floating islands were close to each other. No matter what happened, the news would spread in the blink of an eye. Everyone knew everyone around here. Keenan was too pissed to swallow his fury. At that moment, he felt very serious. From the top of the silver flute, a bright silver light suddenly burst out. Numerous mysterious thin rays spread out from it. Simultaneously, Zen felt there was something familiar about the burst of light, chaotic energy. Upon noticing the burst of chaotic energy, everyone present began to show signs of fear. The top-ranked true gods in the hall were no exception. Anyone below a holy being's status was completely unable to resist the chaotic energy's erosion. Neither a consummate true god nor a demi-holy being. Zen raised his eyebrows slightly. Seeing as the flute could emit such chaotic energy, it was logical to deduce that it was a supreme chaotic weapon. And upon noticing the nervous warriors in continuous retreat, Zen knew that Keenan's next move was bound to be extremely fierce. "I sense trouble," he thought solemnly to himself. At that very moment, Zen's dull eyes suddenly lit up. This time, not only did he refuse to retreat, but he rushed toward Keenan with speed and might. The chaotic energy could be seen pouring out from the silver flute and it was slowly circling around, preparing a killing tactic. How could an ordinary person even dare to approach such danger? Even just a tiny amount of chaotic energy could, and would, be a problem. Zen, on the other hand, didn't have to deal with this psychological burden. The chaotic energy's poison wasn't harmful to Zen in any way. In order to avoid making himself too ostentatious, Zen gently twisted his body and found a gap to dodge through. "Is that guy going to stop Keenan?" Someone shouted in surprise. "He is much too bold. Encountering chaotic energy is far from being pleasant. Does he really think that he could be a match to Keenan?" Someone else retorted. Despite the fact that Zen had just fooled Keenan with several godly ways, no one imagined that he'd be stronger than a true god. Even among the low-ranked true gods, Keenan was one of the strongest. In other words, to everyone watching, Zen's charge forward was nothing more than asking for his death. As Keenan watched Zen take the initiative to come at him, he felt absolutely overjoyed. He only used the holy Zakaria flute at moments of crisis. The flute was one of the 2 supreme chaotic weapons of the Lu clan. His father had given it to him and forbade him to take it out of Time Sea. Every time he went to a forbidden land, he was obliged to give the holy Zakaria flute to his father before his departure. If the power of the holy Zakaria flute were to break out completely, the hall would probably be destroyed. Even more problems would arise if the chaos became a disturbance to the Han clan elders. If such were the case, Keenan would be punished severely. As Zen charged toward him powerfully, a fierce light flashed in Keenan's eyes. He reached out his hand and gently pinched the holy Zakaria flute. A whistling sound split through the air immediately, and the chaotic energy was slowly absorbed back. Keenan gently waved his hands together at the same time, and the momentum within his body rushed toward his godly tile. Since Zen had dared fool him, he would let him know what a miserable price he would have to pay. Even though Keenan had used his momentum, he still hadn't applied his godly way. He wasn't out of tactics, yet. Using momentum went hand in hand with using faith energy. That said though, the godly tile could help the faith energy play its role to an extreme. There was no doubt about it. Keenan was going to tear Zen to shreds in the most obvious and grotesque way possible. The very second Zen was standing before him, Keenan's body exuded momentum and every inch of his muscular body surged and pulsed. His arms were raised in the air, as if they contained endless power. This strength came partly from his corporeal body, but most of it was formed by his momentum. As his arms clashed together, his hands transformed into two giant tiger claws and he fiercely grabbed at Zen. He was as fast as lightning and grabbing onto Zen's arms was no problem at all. Boy, don't be a hero if you don't have the strength. Keenan spat coldly, staring at Zen who was now only inches away from his face. Although Keenan knew he was younger than Zen, he was sure that he had a higher cultivation base than him, and therefore, he treated Zen like a junior warrior. You don't get the chance to regret your actions, though. My warning has come too late. Alas. With a gentle sigh, his only remaining desire was to tear Zen apart. Thad, Kelsey murmured, completely startled. She tried to stop Keenan, but it was too late. LaQuisha's heart began beating faster and faster. From the very beginning, she had originally planned to let Elena compete with Thad to find out his identity. After watching Zen display all sorts of godly ways firsthand, she had begun to doubt her own intuition. It was in that split second that the premonition in LaQuisha's heart became extremely strong and sensitive. She couldn't ignore it any longer. Her judgments were based on a certain logic. This Thad guy was definitely not a mediocre warrior, considering his capacity of mastering 6 or even 7 kinds of godly ways at the same time. Such a smart individual just couldn't be stupid enough to rush towards Keenan unprepared. He must have the needed confidence and skill. In this respect, he was very much like Zen. LaQuisha had seen Zen's horrifying strength in the past. Zen had obtained plenty from exploring the collapsing mountain race that year. In only a few more moments, she would know whether this Thad guy was truly Zen or not. The other warriors from the wealthy clans were all calm now. Only a few of the Han clan members were considered untouchable. As for everyone else, if someone was killed, the family could choose whether or not to scold the killer. Moreover, word of the deceased wouldn't even be spread throughout the clan. Beneath everyone's longing gaze, Zen surprisingly displayed a relaxed expression. He smiled at Keenan and said, "You calling me boy? You know you have no right to call me that." After saying such words, Zen suddenly began wriggling his body on the spot. As he squirmed ceaselessly on spot, Zen activated the 9 stars and motivated an enormous force. Zen's movement wasn't extremely fast, but because of the power infusion, it was too heavy for Keenan to react. When he clenched Zen's arm, he felt a huge force escape it, which was much greater than that of anyone he had ever fought in his life before. With the strength Zen was exuding from his arms, Keenan was soon tossed into the air toward the hall's ceiling by force. Splash! A milky white glaze lamp was hanging from the hall's ceiling. Keenan smashed directly into the lamp, and it immediately shattered, falling to the ground in hundreds of sharp little pieces. Keenan, too, smashed violently down to the ground. Before his body was even completely splayed out on the floor, Zen kicked him hard in the ribs. Zen figured that since he had already offended this Keenan guy by defending Elena and Kelsey, he decided to teach him a good lesson. And what was more, Keenan had even tried to kill him. If it wasn't for the fact that he had a couple scruples concerning the wealthy clan standing behind Keenan, he would have sliced him in half with his great weighty sword. With a roar, Keenan's body looked like a folded, half-empty sack of flour. He went crashing into a wall on the other side of the hall, and his body sprawled helplessly out on the ground. Everyone in the hall was now staring at Zen intensely. Previously, they hadn't cared about Zen's background or name. Now though, something had changed. Their hearts and minds were full of questions. When had this guy shown up exactly? And why had they never heard of him before? Chapter 1833, An Outsider. Because the arena of legends existed, a powerful warrior on the floating island would soon attract attention. For example, when Elena placed second among the proven godly warriors in just a couple of years, the wealthy clans knew that she was destined to be a new star of the Han clan. Irrespective of whether they were weak or powerful, warriors could always find opponents to match their level of strength. The arena of legends was not only for battles of strength, it could also prove to everyone a warrior's talent and their future. Zen had also done well in this arena, winning all of his battles. But he hadn't climbed up to obtain a rank. He was like a ghost wandering around the arena, constantly drawing points. Except for the dozens of proving godly warriors who Zen had defeated, no one else knew him. Among all the proving godly warriors, Elena was only second to Donovan, the little talent of the Zhang clan. And yet, she hadn't been able to defeat Kenan. There was a huge gap between the strengths of a world lord and a true god, which one couldn't cross by relying merely on their talent. After all, the energy released by a true god's momentum was much more than ordinary life vitality. Zen had deftly combined 6 godly ways and attacked Kenan. It was not difficult to do this. With careful design, diverse godly ways would often have miraculous effects. But this move was as opportunistic as juggling, and was widely considered a low trick. However, no one had thought that the kid could be so fast and suddenly burst out such unimaginable strength. The way he had defeated Kenan was truly incredible. It was normal for a low-rank true god to challenge or even defeat a mid-rank true god. But it was extremely rare for a proving godly warrior to defeat a low-rank true god. Laquisha's attractive eyes glinted with mirth. Zen's physical disguise was pretty effective, but he couldn't mask his character. She had never even imagined that Zen would quietly appear on Han Clan's floating island. Just as I said, he is stronger than the guy you mentioned, Kelsey said, smiling. No, he isn't, Elena snapped. Now that Thad has arrived at the floating island, I'll ask Father to transfer him from the Purple Soul Hall tomorrow, Kelsey added. Such a talent should be used by our clan, but I'm afraid he's in great trouble now, Elena said, a worried frown now marring her brow. Since Zen had beaten Kenan for them, their enemies would not let him go. Kenan lay on the ground, but no one went to help him. Everyone's attention was focused on Zen. Soon, a young man with long hair walked out of the crowd. A small gem-like mark decorated his forehead, a faint red light flickering around it. He glanced at Zen and said, a strong warrior like you hasn't yet appeared on the rankings. I wonder how the Han clan could let that happen. What's your name? This young man was also a low-rank true god, but he showed a stronger momentum and was apparently more powerful than Kenan. Everyone present thought that Zen was a member of the Han clan, and a talent cultivated secretly in the clan. I'm Thad Luo, Zen replied calmly. He was only pretending to be calm, but from within, was feeling a crushing sense of helplessness. He knew it was difficult to get away from these guys. All he could do was hope that the elders of the Han clan appeared as soon as possible, or there would be real trouble for him this time. There were other luck factors that contributed to his success in defeating Kenan. And while Kenan was one of the most outstanding low-rank true gods, he was definitely not the strongest. If the guy standing before Zen was to challenge him, Zen was not sure he could win. What was more, there were also mid-rank true gods and top-rank true gods in this group. Your surname is Luo, not Han, the young man said, surprised. Everyone else mirrored his expression. Oh, so you are just a lowly outsider, someone in the crowd laughed. But the Han clan seems to have found a treasure. It has been many years since a proving godly warrior rivaled a true god, someone else said. He was lucky to defeat Kenan, and Kenan didn't activate his supreme chaotic weapon. He was tricked by the kid and fought with only his physical strength. The most glorious thing for the warriors from the wealthy clans was their family names. The surnames that had appeared above the time sea all belonged to legendary clans. They were also masters of the entire divine land. As for the outer disciples, it didn't matter if they came from a second-tier or a third-tier clan. They were not qualified to be on equal footing with these rich people. No matter how powerful they were, they would still be considered lowly. After all, there was neither a big clan behind them, nor were they backed by a holy being. Which was why rich people became ruder when they talked about Zen. The long-haired young man grinned, his eyes gleaming fiercely. It's not easy for an outsider to cultivate to this level. But you've hurt Kenan badly. Your life has come to an end. Oh, Sheridan is angry. Both the Lu clan and the Xie clan are the weakest above the time sea. They have always been on good terms, and Kenan is Sheridan's good friend. What if Sheridan kills that guy in a fit of rage? He is just an outsider. Even if he is talented, the Han clan won't look into it. If Zen were from the Han clan, they wouldn't dare do anything to him. They would only teach him a lesson. But he wasn't. Things were different to outsiders. Although outsiders could enter the floating islands through great efforts, there wouldn't be much of a difference in their status. They would meet double standards on many levels. The moment Sheridan Xie finished his sentence, he lunged at Zen. He was ranked 40th among the low-rank true gods and was much more powerful than Kenan. Zen had already been on the alert. So when he sensed Sheridan Shia's movement, he retreated quickly, stepping out of his foe's way. Zen was so fast no one among the proving godly warriors could parallel him. Sheridan Shia smiled coldly and said, running away. The red in the gem mark on his forehead flashed and enveloped him in its shadow. While he chased Zen, he dragged out a number of figures sheathed in red behind him so that it looked like a large group of people was chasing after Zen. And it seemed that he was even faster than Zen. No sooner had Zen retreated 80 feet than Sheridan Shia appeared before him and blocked his path. He placed 2 of his slender fingers on his forehead and touched the blood-red mark. A ray of blood light flashed from the gem mark on his forehead and gathered on his fingertips. A metallic sound resonated from his fingertips, his bloody fingers seeming to have turned into 2 sharp swords. He flipped his right hand and pointed 2 fingers at Zen, his eyes blazing. Killing an outsider wouldn't give him any sense of achievement. But it would be a great shame for Keenan to lose to this guy, which was why he had decided to help Keenan. At the receiving end of Sheridan Shia's attack, Zen felt cornered. 8 smoky melodies. A puff of white smoke rose from the surface of his body, and his entire body had now become light as paper. 2 rays of sword radiance spurted out of Sheridan Shia's fingertips. Zen floated around as if he couldn't feel gravity. It is really him. LaQuisha looked relieved. She had seen Zen perform the 8 smoky melodies. And now, due to Sheridan Shia's force, Zen used this move to keep his life, which confirmed her conjecture. She was anxious too. She couldn't bear to see Zen killed by these people. Although she was blocked by Langston, she smiled and sent a voice message to Grant. Chapter 1834, Threat. Everything happened so fast that it was all a blur. After Zen used the 8 smoky melodies, he suddenly lost his weight and floated in the air like smoke. On the other hand, Sheridan didn't pull his punches. The red light on his fingers intertwined with each other as numerous small red rings circled all around his fingertips. A pleasant, metallic clang rang out every time the rings came into contact with each other. When he slightly tapped his fingers, a strange red sword light burst out from his fingertips. Swish, swish, swish. The 8 smoky melodies was known as a flexible skill in the evolutionary universe because it didn't have much gravity, and all the things inside it were relatively lighter than those in the Divine Land. However, it wasn't as effective when used in the Divine Land. After all, the 8 smoky melodies was just an ordinary kind of martial arts technique. Thus, Zen found it hard to use it against Sheridan's godly way. Sometimes, he even had to roll on the ground just to dodge the red sword radiance, and it made him look very awkward. Dodge towards this side, move back quickly. Meanwhile, Elena and Kelsey cheered nervously but excitedly for Zen as they couldn't participate in the battle. They didn't know how dangerous his situation really was, but they believed that he could turn the odds to his favor. Of course, Zen clearly wanted to do so. However, his opponent had the advantage since the beginning, so he almost had no chance to fight back. He was even lucky enough to dodge the sword radiance, but he knew that he couldn't keep going like this. Whoosh! A red sword radiance left a long trail of red light in the air as it swept past Zen's face. It left a scratch on his cheek that was almost invisible to the naked eye, but strings of blood gushed out from the very small wound. His face remained impassive, but his eyes began to burn with rage. His opponent, who was much faster than him, continuously shot sword radiance from his fingers to attack. Furthermore, he always maintained a distance of 3 steps away from Zen, which left him no way to escape. Despite his tight predicament, Zen quickly did a mental analysis of the situation. He knew that he had limited means to use in the face of such a strong opponent. Aside from all kinds of godly ways, the best thing that he had thought of was only his physical strength. As soon as the idea popped into his head, he suddenly turned around and ran towards the other direction. A cold smile was plastered on Sheridan's face as he leisurely chased after Zen, while the sword radiance in his fingertips continued to shoot his target. Suddenly, Zen stopped in his tracks. His feet left 2 small holes on the solid ground. At the same time, his great power caused the entire hall to shake violently. Even if he had no choice but to rely on his powerful strength and body to stop so abruptly, his opponent couldn't do such a thing. If Sheridan tried to do the same, he would have slipped some feet away. Experienced warriors could always foresee their estimated distance in advance and stop at their desired spot, but Zen didn't give Sheridan the time. If he did attempt to do the same thing Zen did, his body would probably fail to withstand the momentum and his legs would most likely be fractured. At one glance, Zen's move looked rather simple, but it required a high level of physical strength and a tough body. Not even the true gods could achieve such a feat. Zen was currently faced against a true god, so he had no other better options but to exert his physical strength to the limit. Clearly, Sheridan was shocked to see that Zen could suddenly stop in his tracks, then quickly stand still like a tree trunk, while he still rushed towards Zen with an unstoppable momentum. Yet, he wasn't nervous in the slightest. After all, he was much stronger than Keenan, and knew too many methods to fight against a proving godly warrior. A gust of wind blew as he rushed towards Zen with two outstretched fingers, which sent 3 beams of sword radiance in a row. At the same time, he twisted his body in an attempt to bypass Zen. There was a slight glint in Zen's eyes as he had expected such a counterattack. His strong body rolled in the air, and his flexible limbs contorted into a certain pose so that all the 3 beams of sword radiance skimmed through his underarm, crotch, and waist, respectively. After he had evaded the 3 beams of sword radiance, he quickly tried to grab Sheridan. However, the sword radiance that was shot towards him forced him to dodge slightly to the left, as Sheridan slid to the right. They were 3 feet away from each other, but Zen couldn't seem to reach him. "You are too naive," Sheridan said with a complacent smile, as if everything had happened according to his calculation. However, he noticed that Zen's lips were also curved into a mocking grin. What is he laughing at? Just as Sheridan thought about Zen's intentions, an invisible hand pressed against him and slammed him hard to the ground. Bang! Another violent tremor shook the whole hall once again. All the people present were speechless at the unexpected scene in front of them. What happened? What forced Sheridan to the ground? It looked like an invisible power. How could that man control his power in that way? Did he cultivate the might godly way to a high level? More and more murmurs filled the hall. They couldn't believe what had just happened. Some of them were knowledgeable and knew that there were only 2 ways to freely circulate one's physical strength around their bodies. The first was to cultivate the might godly way to a high level. After one cultivated to the 3rd stage of the might godly way, they could extend their strength beyond their bodies and form a new body, an invisible body formed from their extended strength. This body was powerful, and could also serve as a shield. The second method was to comprehend the cross-world theurgy. With this skill, a holy being could gather the power from their inner worlds wherever they went. Since Zen wasn't a holy being, he couldn't use the cross-world theurgy. But even if he cultivated the might godly way, he hadn't even condensed his godly tile. Thus, how did he get to cultivate to the 3rd stage of the might godly way? It was why it came as no surprise when everyone wanted to know how he had managed to extend his physical strength. Even the top-ranked true gods who had come with the warriors all looked at him with utter shock and confusion. While everyone was still in a daze, Zen's eyes glittered with murderous intent. He grabbed the air, and the invisible hand lifted Sheridan up from the ground. Sheridan was still out of his wits because of the heavy slap. Now, he looked limp and lifeless as he was hung in midair. There was an uproar when Zen suddenly launched his attacks. His fingers continuously hit Sheridan's limbs, chest, and spine. Crack, 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 crack. All of his moves were extremely precise and crushed the most important bones and joints all over Sheridan's body. It was too much that before Sheridan could react or even scream, he already lost his consciousness because of the immense pain. When Zen was satisfied enough, he threw him onto the ground and stepped on him. He looked around the hall coldly and said, "I didn't intend to offend you here today, but these girls of the Han clan are my old acquaintances, so I have to step out and help them. If you want to try my strength, I am willing to spar with you inside the Jade Wall of Legends. But if anyone wants to kill me here, I'm afraid that this guy will have to join me in hell." As soon as his voice died down, he lightly stepped on the gem mark on Sheridan's forehead. Had Zen used his full power, he could even make a top-ranked true god's head explode. What more with Sheridan, who was only a low-ranked true god? Chapter 1835, Forced to Kill. By now, Zen realized that his involvement with these men would be a never-ending battle. Even if he defeated Sheridan, someone else would inevitably take his place to continue harassing him. Harder still, it was verging on impossible for Zen to fight against a true god, even if it was a low-rank one. At his current level, he would definitely lose if he fought with a mid-rank one. His only chance was to hold Sheridan hostage. That was the most realistic strategy he could adopt. Although the disciples of the wealthy clans were cruel, they cherished their lives above all else. In their eyes, everyone outside the floating islands was worthless. They would never sacrifice themselves for Zen. And he was right. At the sight of the fierce expression on Zen's face, silence fell upon the crowd like a giant blanket. Out of the almost oppressive silence, a purple-haired young man near Zen at the edge of the crowd narrowed his eyes and said in a harsh voice, "Do you have any idea who you're going up against?" "Of course," Zen answered, a smirk curling the edge of his lips. "He is from the Xie clan. That is all the information I need." "You are naive. His surname is unimportant. What you don't know is that his grandfather is a holy being, replied the purple-haired man, visibly frustrated at Zen's complacence. You know the consequences of killing him, don't you? He said, louder this time. Zen didn't have to say anything. The purple-haired young man sneered victoriously. He knew Zen wouldn't dare to do anything to harm Sheridan. After this exchange, the tense atmosphere relaxed slightly. It was like a bomb had been disarmed. The crowd knew that Zen's intentions were nonviolent. Zen blinked, his expression wide-eyed and somewhat disturbed. If I don't kill him today, will you let me go? Sheridan has been trying to kill me time and time again, and every time he has acted without mercy. Why can't I have the chance to kill him since he already wants to kill me? It's just a matter of survival. Of self-defense. Anyone can relate to that. Is his life so precious that it is worth exchanging mine for? Having said his piece, Zen stomped on Sheridan, whose chest caved in because of the impact. Sheridan spluttered and groaned, gasping for breath as Zen's boot pressed into his chest. It sounded as though Sheridan was barely clinging on to life. Many true gods in the divine land had existed for countless years. It was not in their nature and practice to show emotions. Emotions were always seen as a sign of weakness, even if it was compassion or pity towards someone who was dying in front of them. For instance, when Master Evil, whose remnant soul was in Zen's mind currently, saw this scene, he wouldn't even blink his eyes. He had been so used to such kind of situations. However, these disciples of wealthy clans were quite young. Experienced as they were in the countless battles in the arena of legends, those battles were simulated and were certainly not fights to the death. The disputes among these disciples from the big clans on the floating islands often left room for negotiations. Being skilled and all having a high status, they just felt it was more practical that way. And if they really killed each other, the result wouldn't be favorable. Now, it seemed that the disciples had greatly underestimated Zen's abilities as well as cruelty. The disciples exchanged confused and scared glances, not knowing how to answer Zen's question. The purple-haired young man who had spoken before also fell into silence. The illusion of nonviolence was shattered, and tension charged the atmosphere once again. It was obvious that Zen would absolutely kill Sheridan at the slightest hint that fighting would begin. However, by killing Sheridan, Zen would inadvertently sign his own death sentence too. And this group of disciples would also get into trouble. They might be not severely punished, but they would be admonished and grounded by their respective clans. After all, they weren't free to do what they wanted. Each clan had their own set of rules and restrictions for such situations. Two of the three girls, Kelsey and Elena, were overjoyed, in stark contrast to the scared and confused crowd. They wore proud smiles on their faces. This young proving godly warrior named Thad alone was enough to hold these disciples in awe. If the news got out, the Han clan would gain widespread respect. After all, he came from the floating island of the Han clan and was now protecting the princesses of this clan. However, LaQuisha's eyes were as clear and deep as a still mountain pond on a clear and crisp winter day. Those eyes were fixed on Zen. She sighed deeply, and felt her heart flutter with admiration. This man was so strong. He was never scared of anything, not even his own death. And he had always triumphed over everyone in the divine refinement forbidden land, using only his own strength. Now that he was on the floating island, where the Han clan lived, he was showing strength of character despite being faced with a situation so terrifying most would flee. Beside LaQuisha stood Langston, her fiancé. Noticing her expression, he could not help but feel helplessly jealous seeing her eyes fill with admiration for another man. It was an arranged engagement, and they only met twice. Needless to say they did not know each other very well. However, Langston could not contain his jealousy as, distant as she was, she had nevertheless been promised to him. Langston came to visit LaQuisha often, but she had refused to see him every time. Her rejection made him rather angry, and now his anger was compounded by his jealousy. What kind of person was Langston? His status, cultivation level and talent were on par with LaQuisha's. He could find a partner of her level easily. It was not as if he didn't have other options. Countless girls with the same breeding wanted to marry him. However, as a male member of the Leng clan, Langston had factors other than breeding and talent to consider when choosing a future wife. He knew why his father wanted him to marry a girl from the Han clan. He also knew that a great earthquake was due to hit the time sea. After careful evaluation of the overall situation, he was determined to marry LaQuisha. It had not been a difficult decision to make, however, as he happened to like her. After all, she was beautiful and elegant. Now, a murderous intent formed in his mind. His entire being filled with fury as he saw his fiancée being attracted to another man. Deliberately, he walked towards Zen, with a cold smile on his face, and said, "I've seen a lot of people who look tough in the outside, but actually turn out to be cowards. Do you want to exchange your life with his? Do you dare?" "Lang," someone shouted. The crowd stirred, shocked. "That guy is a little crazy. You'd better," someone warned. "Don't provoke him, just let the matter go, okay?" yelled another voice. Upon seeing Zen being so serious, the crowd didn't want to provoke him to do something stupid. Seeing Langston make his move made them uneasy. They didn't expect Langston's reaction either. Instead of backing down, he walked slowly and deliberately towards Zen and pointed at him. "Humph," he said, addressing the crowd. "This kind of person probably had a hard time climbing up from the bottom of society. I'm pretty sure he won't have the guts to push through with this and risk losing everything." As he spoke, his eyes followed the changes in Zen's expression. Of course, Langston didn't care a smidge about Sheridan's safety. He only wanted Zen to die and at least be humiliated. If Zen dared kill Sheridan, he was doomed. Everyone knew that. Even if Langston himself didn't kill him, the Xie clan would never let him go. If Zen managed to solve the problem by words and threats alone without spilling any blood, things would be a lot less complicated. That was exactly what Langston wanted to do. As Langston kept moving forward, Zen saw through his mind. He sneered, "Some people are so arrogant that they think they can read other people's minds." As he spoke, Zen stumbled forward slightly, his feet unstable on the uneven surface and the squirming Sheridan. Langston took that as a sign to make a move. He rushed towards Zen at a lightning speed, shouting, "How dare you!" The rest of the crowd looked at Zen in disbelief. In their eyes, it seemed as though Sheridan had been hit with an enormous, invisible blunt object. The skin all over his body seemed to be stretched taut, and bleeding cracks began to appear. Puff! Sheridan appeared to have been crushed by a powerful force from head to toe. His body collapsed, almost flattening against the floor, as if he had turned into a piece of paper. A huge amount of blood splashed around his collapsed body, spreading out like the petals of some grotesque flower. "Ah!" he shouted in enormous pain. The entire crowd gasped in horror. Elena and Kelsey covered their mouths at the same time. They were trying not to scream. Staring blankly at the blood stains on the floor, LaQuisha bit her lips sharply as her face turned deathly pale. Langston had provoked Zen to kill Sheridan. She realized that had been his ultimate goal. He wanted to send Zen to his own death. Langston turned to address the crowd once again, triumphant. His plan had worked. "What a cruel man. You all saw what he just did, every one of you. Let me kill him now. If we spare him, he will surely become an evil warrior and destroy us in the future. He must be killed, for the good of us and our clans." Zen's eyes still exuded murderous intent. At the same time, something inside him seemed to shift. A ray of golden light began to flicker on the surface of his soul. However, the golden light flickered and died. He knew that if he were to use his emotion-closing godly way, he would definitely fight to the death with his enemies. He might have the tiniest chance of winning, but he would still have to suffer after this fight. Was he going to use such a forbidden godly way in front of so many warriors who all had powerful backgrounds? Zen had been very restrained from the beginning. He had been careful not to displease the group of disciples from the wealthy clans on the floating islands. There had been too many responsibilities on his shoulders, and that had made his resolve occasionally waver after he entered the Divine Land. Moreover, since the moment he entered the floating island of the Han clan, he had been making doubly sure to not act as arrogantly and practice the utmost restraint. But sometimes, situations can get out of control no matter how hard one tries to maintain it. Whoosh! As soon as he had crushed Sheridan with his feet, Zen moved backwards. As he retreated, he pulled out his great weighty sword. Without looking, he swung his sword left and right at everything and anything coming at him. On the list of the Arena of Legends, Langston ranked 5th among all the mid-rank true gods of the Divine Land. Master Evil was a top-level warrior among the mid-rank true gods. But compared to Langston, Master Evil was far inferior in skills and capabilities. The Arena of Legends wasn't the ultimate test of ability. Outside the Time Sea, Langston could easily overpower and even kill some of the top-ranked true gods from the second-tier clans. Zen was unable to resist such a strong enemy. He didn't use the emotion-closing godly way, but a considerable amount of strength source was poured into the sword strike. Whoosh! With a blast of wind, Zen's sword didn't land on his enemy, but swayed off course and cut through the empty air. Langston's speed was beyond Zen's imagination. Chapter 1836, Being Defeated. Zen let go of his sword without any hesitation. The great weighty sword flew off from his hand, whirling in the air, and piercing through the wall. From there, it continued its trajectory before smashing heavily into the open space outside. Two low-rank true gods outside the hall could only stare in shock as the large sword stuck itself into the ground. They knew there were some important people inside the hall, but they didn't know that there was also a fight, so they were quite surprised by the sudden appearance of the great weighty sword. Meanwhile, Zen, having let go of his sword, contracted his body and rolled to the side. His opponent was such a top strongman that he couldn't capture his figure at all. Both his eyesight and spiritual sense were unusable to him. His decisions from henceforth were all based on mere instinct. As he rolled to the side, a faint figure flashed through where he had been. That figure launched 3 crimson claw prints. Swish, swish, swish. The 3 claw prints did not catch Zen but were strangely in the air for quite a long time. Langston stood with a trace of surprise in his eyes. Behind his back was his hand that flashed a faint, cold light. Zen couldn't have dodged his blow, but it seemed that Zen had a god's support and managed to avoid him. Interesting, Langston exclaimed before a cold smile broke through his face. Let's see you avoid me this time. He then took a step forward and his figure immediately became a blur. He couldn't fly as a mid-rank true god, but his extreme speed made up for it. Luck had helped Zen avoid Langston's grasp just now, but how long would it last? Just as Zen watched Langston disappear, he gritted his teeth and rolled away again. However, Langston was prepared this time. Before he jumped, he already predicted the direction Zen would try to escape to and thus was able to make his way there and wait for him. He still stood with one hand behind him, as if it was a great insult for him to fight against a proving godly warrior with both his hands. He was about to grab Zen, but his expression suddenly changed. Langston suddenly raised his entire body and turned his head backward, as if he had been pulled out of the desert. Only then did he stand firmly on the ground as a rough wound appeared on his forehead. Despite their difference in level, Zen would never sit still and wait for death. Holy beings disdained the use of cross-world theurgy as a tool to activate the strength source, but, right now, it was the only means Zen could use to resist his opponent. Zen had managed to figure out Langston's plan, so after rolling over, he extracted 80% of his strength source and turned it into a powerful spear. Langston's mistake was that he didn't take Zen seriously. The young man was only a proving godly warrior after all, and his pride did not allow him to waste that much power on him. Thus, Langston's attack methods remained the same, jumping up high and then rushing down from the sky like a hawk. As he rushed down, a long spear flew out and hit him on the forehead. At the moment of impact, Zen abruptly pushed the spear up. Fortunately for Langston, he was faster and managed to dodge the attack. The spear merely grazed his skin as he stepped back. The fact remained though that a proving godly warrior like Zen managed to land a hit on Langston and injure him. Langston Lang is hurt. A supreme mid-rank true god was hurt by a proving godly warrior. How could it be possible? The people still hadn't recovered their shock from Sheridan's death, and Langston's injury was a tad bit overwhelming for them. Was it all truly just luck? They deemed Zen to be lucky enough to have killed Sheridan, but it seemed the young man's strength was also quite formidable. However, Sheridan was only a low-rank true god. Despite the rarity of such an event, it wasn't impossible for a proving godly warrior to defeat a low-rank true god. Back when the Holy Emperor of the Leng clan was only a proving godly warrior, he managed to defeat 12 low-rank true gods. Zen proved that he was extremely talented and powerful by killing Sheridan. But Langston was a different story. The people just knew that once that guy fought Zen, the latter would be doomed. Langston wasn't just one of the mid-rank true gods, he was also one of the strongest. However, the scene in front of them was a contradiction of everything they had ever known. Langston was injured and, from the looks of it, his head would have been pierced if he was a second too slow. The noble son of the Leng clan stared up at his opponent firmly. The calm in his face had completely disappeared and there were 2 cyclones that raged in his eyes. What was most telling of his rage was that his other hand was now held down. It was extremely shameful for Langston to have been injured by a mere proving godly warrior. He never expected this at all. It seems that I must make your death a bit more painful, Langston muttered just as his figure disappeared. Rip. Zen didn't have any time to react as he felt a sudden, stabbing pain from the side of his body. He looked down and saw 3 distinct claw prints on his waist. Langston wanted to cut Zen in half, however, he found the young man's seemingly ordinary robe impenetrable. The audience was baffled. Lang, you're choosing to be merciful to him again. He even didn't tear that guy's clothes. He's obviously angry though. Is there something wrong with that guy's clothes? It was all thanks to the redemption armor that Zen's body was still whole, however, Langston's claw prints still managed to penetrate a portion of power onto Zen's body. As the power was released, Zen felt it rampage inside him. Humph! Langston huffed, surprised at Zen's protective clothing but nonetheless determined to attack the young man again. Whoosh, 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 he rushed over towards Zen and waved his hand casually. Claw prints once again appeared in the air and strangely did not dissipate. The moment Langston approached Zen, the claw prints he had left in the air stretched out and rushed towards Zen as a streak of light. Scratching, scratching, scratching. This time, 10 claw prints came and scratched Zen's body continuously. These claw prints penetrated through Zen's redemption armor while the forces inside his body continued to rampage and destroy his internal organs. Puff! Zen spat out blood but continued to roll to the other side. As he rolled, he left behind a streak of golden blood on the ground. The strength hidden in Langston's strange claw prints was too special and his body couldn't bear its power. Seeing his opponent down, Langston now walked freely and had a contemptuous look on his face. He was just careless before and was accidentally hit by Zen's spear earlier. The grace didn't mean that the young man was more powerful than him. Just as he was about to end Zen's life, a graceful figure suddenly floated over and shielded Zen. It was Laquisha. Let him go, she ordered Langston in a cold voice. He killed Sheridan, so he must die. You know this. Even if I let him go, he will still die, Langston reasoned. He stared at Laquisha with a sneer. Even if he didn't have deep feelings for her, she was still his fiancée, so he still had to listen to whatever she said. Be that as it may, you do not have the authority to execute him, she said. Langston tilted his head and smiled coldly. What if I insist on killing him? Splash! A little blue flame rose between Laquisha's brows and swiftly ignited her hair. At the same time, blue flames burst forth and spiraled around her arm. She was entirely enveloped in blue flame as she stood against Langston determinedly. If you want to kill him, you'll have to go through me first. Chapter 1837, Hug. The 3 siblings of the Han clan were now famous in the Time Sea. Pascal, Laquisha, and Elena, the youngest children of the Holy Emperor, were all outstanding in the younger generation. Among them, Elena was ranked second among the proving godly warriors while Laquisha was ranked third among the low-rank true gods. As for Pascal, he was ranked first among the mid-rank true gods. There were 36 floating islands on the Time Sea, meaning the existence of 36 wealthy clans. The talents of each clan were not to be underestimated. Among them, some were lineal descendants, some were geniuses from the sub-branches of the main clans, and some were outstanding disciples of other clans. But the 3 siblings of the Han clan occupied the top positions respectively, creating quite the miracle. Someone even announced that the Han clan was about to rise again, likely to break into the top 3 among the big clans in the future. Soon after Laquisha came back from the divine refinement Forbidden Land, she had condensed her own godly tile. But it was a very special godly tile. Her inner world was completely different from that of others. Before condensing her own godly tile, all Laquisha knew was that when her body emitted deadly blue preternatural flames, it was completely out of her control. The flame had even hurt her family, distressing her greatly. Not even the Holy Emperor knew what the flame was, nor could he help his daughter get rid of it. When Laquisha condensed her godly tile, her inner world underwent a dramatic change. At that time, countless blue preternatural flames spurted from her inner world she had created and preserved. They burned her entire inner world to ash, destroying all its living beings along with it. It was an extremely painful process. As a girl, it pained Laquisha to witness the numerous creatures that she had created burn down to nothing. When the flames descended upon her inner world, huge clouds of blue flames appeared in the sky. It was these clouds that condensed her godly tile, allowing her to become a low-rank true god. Countless creatures came into existence in her inner world at the same time. These creatures were not human beings, nor were they created according to Laquisha's own will. They were all monsters born in the sea of flames, and they had no problem living in these blue flames. They began reproducing and becoming the aboriginals of her inner world. The godly tile condensed by a proving godly warrior was usually for one of 3,000 godly ways. For instance, if one cultivated the 5 elements godly way, the internal momentum of the 5 elements godly way would condense into the 5 elements godly tile. But Laquisha's godly tile was an abnormal one. The divine land was vast and boundless, home to countless divine citizens. And indeed, there was a small portion of proving godly warriors that condensed some strange and unique godly tiles. They did not belong to any of the 3,000 godly ways, but the vast majority of them were useless. Such were called useless godly tiles. It happened so that although most of the abnormal godly tiles were useless, some of them had incomparable power. And Laquisha's godly tile belonged to the latter. By taking advantage of the blue preternatural flames, she quickly accumulated points in the arena of legends, quickly climbing up to the 3rd rank. She was the only female warrior among the top 10 low-rank true gods, and she had amazed all the people on the 36 floating islands. It was said that the Leng clan was willing to unite with the Han clan by marriage because of Laquisha's special abilities. The blue flames on her body were much purer and stronger than they were when she was in the divine refinement forbidden land. Even though Laquisha was no match for Langston, he was still afraid of her preternatural flames. In spite of that, it was still easy for Langston to defeat Laquisha with his strength. But Laquisha was the woman he liked, and the news that they would get married had spread far and wide across the floating islands. Now, this woman was going to go against him, all for another man. How could the arrogant Langston endure such a thing? The corners of his eyes twitched. His eyes glinted with a strong intent to murder as he stared at Laquisha and asked, "How could you do this to me for an outsider and nobody from grassroots? You're my fiancé." Hearing Langston's exclamation, the warriors in the hall exchanged looks of surprise. Why did he suddenly lose his temper, they wondered. Flames flickered on the tips of Laquisha's hair as mockery filled her beautiful eyes. "You're Langston, aren't you? What do you want to say?" Langston asked. "We've met only a few times. Although my father has arranged the engagement for me, he's never asked for my consent. We're not even friends. How dare you say that I'm your fiancé? If I'm forced to marry you someday, I will end my life before the marriage. Do you understand?" Laquisha was calm as she said it, and it seemed that she felt what she did was justified. That made Langston's eyes twitch more violently. No man could bear such an insult, and he was known to be an excellent one. Laquisha's words enraged him. His handsome face radiated a murderous aura, like a storm formed by countless demons raging in the hall. Whoever felt the killing intent began to panic, and the few top-ranked true gods were no exception. Taking slow steps, Grant calmly said, "Everyone, although we are guarding our own clans, there are some things I must make clear. If this guy intends to hurt our princess, I will definitely kill him. If you try to stop me, be ready to face the anger of the Han clan." The young warriors were running amok. Grant knew he should abide by the rules and avoid getting involved, he couldn't stop them either. But he couldn't sit idly by if the lives of the Han clan's core disciples were threatened as well. The few top-ranked true gods also realized the seriousness of the matter. If the young master of the Leng clan really killed the Han clan princess, they would be held responsible. They also wanted to take control of the situation. But Langston didn't take any action, he was also trying his best to restrain himself. To these guards of the wealthy clans, they would try their best to keep themselves out of the fights between the wealthy clan descendants. Ha ha ha. After the killing intent lingered for a long while, Langston suddenly began laughing wildly. After he stopped laughing, he looked down at Laquisha and said indifferently, "Don't forget who I am. I will never be stuck with one woman. Let me tell you, it is an established fact that the Leng clan and the Han clan will unite by marriage. You can die if you don't want to marry me. But after you die, I will marry your sister. If your sister dies too, I will marry your cousin." Hearing that, Elena and Kelsey looked at each other in worry. Laquisha's eyes flashed. Langston wasn't someone who would easily give in. If she meant what she said, Langston was also sure to act on his words. "I don't want to talk about this with you today," Langston continued. "But the man behind you must die. You can have a try." Laquisha was ready to go all out. Zen was standing up for Elena and she wouldn't let him die for this. Lying on the ground, Zen couldn't move as his blood continued gushing out. He leaned against the door to the hall and stared at Laquisha's back, the flickering flames on her hair sending him into deep thought. Did she already know who he was? Even if it was Thad who got into trouble because of helping Elena, Laquisha wouldn't have been so determined to protect him. As he was gathering his thoughts, Zen felt a figure flicker nearby. As a gust of wind blew, his heart sank. If Langston really acted to kill him, Laquisha wouldn't be able to stop him. Seeing Langston pounce on Zen from the sky, Laquisha dashed towards Zen and hugged him tightly at the same time. Sizzle! Blazing blue preternatural flames swept out and covered the area. Even Langston was afraid of Laquisha's preternatural flames, his body twisted and landed several feet away. He could only stare coldly into the flames. It seemed that Laquisha's preternatural flames could burn everything. And if so, wouldn't that brat also be burned to death at that rate? Chapter 1838. Talking in the Flames. When Zen was in the divine refinement forbidden land, his body had been tempered by Laquisha's preternatural flames. Because of this, he was valued by the members of the Collapsing Mountain race. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for the two of them to leave the Collapsing Mountain race. Maybe because the smell of the calamity-dispelling fragrance could stimulate the most primitive instincts of any creature, the image of her and Zen hugging each other was deeply imprinted in Laquisha's mind. It was fresh in her memory and was just one of the many indicators that she had been missing Zen all this while. But she was also certain that Zen was destined to be just a passerby in her life. He had carried a great mission, had incredible talent, and had great ambitions. But he was now going to complete something that seemed impossible. Even though Laquisha was fully aware of this, she met Zen again and confirmed to herself that Thad and Zen were the same person. It was then that all her hesitation fell away and Laquisha began to try her best to help Zen. But she hadn't expected things to go like this. Zen had first killed Sheridan, and then Langston had wanted to kill Zen. She had told Grant to ask her brother, Pascal, to come over to her as soon as possible. But Pascal had still not arrived. In a moment of desperation, Laquisha hugged Zen. She then activated her godly tile and drew the blue unearthly fire from her inner world, letting the flames envelop Zen in her. Oh my goodness, if she keeps doing this, she will burn Thad to death. Elena exclaimed, looking at the fire in blank shock. But Kelsey whispered, I wonder if Thad can bear the flames. How can he resist her flames? Have you forgotten how formidable her flames are? Elena retorted. They were the people closest to Laquisha, so they knew her preternatural blue flames the best. Ever since Elena was a child, she had been warned not to get too close to Laquisha. But Elena seldom heeded the warning and continued to run after Laquisha. Whenever Elena was with Laquisha, the unearthly fire that she could not control hadn't erupted. But several outbursts of Laquisha's preternatural flames had left a horrible impression on Elena. Some members of the Han clan had even died because of Laquisha's flames, and there had been a period of time that no one in her clan had dared to serve her. Kelsey and Elena stared at this scene, shocked. Zen was only trying to help them, but now, their sister's flames were slowly burning him to death. They felt sorry for him. Langston and the disciples from other rich clans also believed that Zen would be burned to death. They had heard of Laquisha's magical flames, and some had even lost to her many times in the arena of legends because of her flames. The blue flames circled Laquisha. The others felt the temperature of the unearthly fire but couldn't see what was going on inside it. No one could go through it despite their great powers of perception. And strangely enough, Laquisha didn't look like she was going to stop. Langston stared into the flames for a long time. He hated Zen to the core, so much that although Zen had probably burned to ashes, he wanted to see that with his own eyes. But Laquisha didn't have the slightest intention to stop the fire. Since she had the cultivation base of a low-rank true god, she could effortlessly keep the fire going for 10 days. Enough, Laquisha, Langston said, fighting to maintain the calm in his voice. The resentment in his eyes had simmered down a little. He had been very excited to see Zen's end, but he had calmed down enough to think about the Leng clan as a whole and not his own personal vengeance. He had been impulsive and had forgotten what his father had taught him. But now, he began to realize that his impulsive behavior would spoil the great plan. Once the Leng clan's plan was carried out, the Han clan would turn to nothing. The flames were still crackling fiercely, drowning out any other sound in the vicinity. If you don't stop the fire, I will extinguish it forcefully, Langston threatened Laquisha. He couldn't put the fire out completely, but he could split the fire in half to see what was going on. But Laquisha didn't pay him any heed. Within the flames, Laquisha hugged Zen tightly again. She hadn't experienced a lot in her life. She was the first daughter of the Holy Emperor of the Han clan, was regarded as his beloved daughter and was treated much better than her brother, Pascal. But she had spent most of her time being lonely and helpless. She had hated the unearthly fire in her body ever since she could remember. She had always been regarded as an alien because of this fire. But nowadays, many young people of the rich clans envied Laquisha's talent. With the extreme power of her unearthly fire, Laquisha easily ranked third among the low-ranked true gods, and she still kept making progress. But they didn't know how much she had hated her talent in the past. The fire that enveloped Laquisha and Zen had 2 layers. Laquisha now had better control over the flames. The flames on the inner layer spun rapidly and could almost protect them from everything. But she was still a little worried. If Langston really wanted to break her flames, he could probably do it. She touched Zen's face lightly, as she took in his golden body. The tiny golden Sanskrit words were still rotating and absorbing her flames. At first, Laquisha had not been so sure that Thad was Zen. But she was now confident of this fact. Only Zen would be unharmed in her unearthly fire. A feeling of happiness crept up on Laquisha at this. She liked Zen not because he had excellent talent or strength, but because she had a feeling that they were destined to meet and be together. Zen seemed to be born to refine his body with flames, and could become stronger in the process of burning. On the contrary, Laquisha was born to release this strange fire. She felt that she and Zen were a perfect match. Women always believed this when they were in love, and there was no doubt that Laquisha was at this stage. Why did you have to change your identity in the Han clan's floating island? Why didn't you look for me? Laquisha asked in a low voice. If Kelsey hadn't gone to the Han clan's ancestral land and they hadn't encountered such an incident, Laquisha would never have known that Zen had entered the floating island. Zen didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at her innocently, as if he didn't know her. At first, Zen had intended to deny his identity, so that Laquisha would have nothing to do with it. Never had he thought that he would eventually need this woman to protect him. And his physical body was undergoing some changes as it burned in this unearthly fire. But now, he couldn't deny his identity anymore, since Laquisha had figured it out on her own. Were you afraid that I would betray you? Laquisha asked, fuming. She did know Zen's identity and some of his secrets, but it didn't mean that she would sell him out to the Hall of Holy Beings. She had no intention of doing that. Instead, she would try her best to help Zen. At the earnest expression on her face, Zen said in a low voice, "No. I'm just afraid you'll be implicated." In fact, Zen thought that Laquisha and Elena were the uncontrollable factors to his plans. But he was also afraid of getting them into trouble. Because once the elders of the Han clan came to know the truth, they would not take Zen's side anymore. And then, it would be even more difficult for Laquisha to deal with the situation. At Zen's answer, Laquisha looked up at him and said softly, "If I were to be involved, I would be in a much better place than the one I am in right now." Chapter 1839, Pascal Han. Sensing Laquisha's affection, Zen's heart skipped a beat. For him, the trip to the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land was mainly for training purpose. He didn't expect to leave such a long-lasting impression on this woman. But keeping in mind what lay ahead, he kept his thoughts to himself. Zen never ever wanted to rely on a woman to help him. Ever since he started to cultivate martial arts, he never expected anyone to help him. However, he always remembered those who did help him, assuring them that he had their back at the time of need. Later, he found out that his father had been decorating his life secretly, helping him to improve. Zen was once very depressed, which however was due to his own nature. A solemn expression crept upon Langston's face as he walked around the flame. He had already heard of this blue preternatural fire, so he found it wise not to touch it. But that didn't mean that he couldn't deal with the flame. If this woman took that guy in with the blue preternatural fire, it would probably be a great shame for him if this thing spread out. He didn't expect Laquisha to behave like this, as she didn't even think of his clan's reputation. If the guy had been burned to ashes, it would have been quite logical for Laquisha to remove the flame. But why did she keep the flame burning? The spectators nervously glanced at each other, with a puzzled expression on their faces. Langston had had enough. He stretched out his hands and clapped. A series of sharp claw prints spread out from his hands. These claw prints rose up in the air and circled Langston. These claw prints would cut anyone who tried to approach Langston. The air was filled with sound of the spinning claw prints. The claw prints spun faster and faster. They also shrank simultaneously beside his body. All the claw prints turned into many small spirals and gathered on his hands. It looked as if a small top was spinning swiftly on his hands. Then he raised his hand and gave it a wave. As a result, the spinning top whooshed over and barged into the flame arranged by Laquisha. There was a splashing sound as the spinning top collided with the preternatural fire. Laquisha's preternatural fire could devour everything. However, the spiral made from the claw prints made of momentum was actually a mass of high-speed spinning energy. Once the energy entered the flames, a gust was generated, swaying the flames sideways and a pathway appeared. The flames were easily extinguished by the strong gust of air that Langston produced. Langston's heart was full of hatred when he saw Laquisha holding Zen so close to her. Elena and Kelsey were also in awe. "Thad Luo is not afraid of Laquisha's preternatural fire," Kelsey exclaimed hastily. With a twinkle in her eyes, Elena stammered, Laquisha knew that. "This man he is." "Who is he?" Kelsey asked, her voice filled with anticipation. Much to her disappointment, Elena just shook her head and remained quiet. Elena was quite astonished when she saw Laquisha wrap herself and Zen with the preternatural fire. She thought that this might kill Thad. Since Thad emerged unscathed from the preternatural fire, she immediately understood that Thad was actually Zen. She remembered that Elena once told her that Zen was the only person who was not afraid of her preternatural fire. However, Elena didn't believe her then. She thought that Zen must have a body protection treasure or a unique cultivation method. Laquitia's claimed that Zen had a special body and was immune to most flames. She thought that since Laquitia used her fire, she already knew that Thad was actually Zen. Interesting. You both are a perfect couple, Langston stated calmly. There was a whooshing sound as Langston took off. He rushed into the fire sea along the road created by the spiral. It was quite dangerous for Langston to break in. But he was a martial artist, and his cultivation base was at a level higher than that of Laquitia. He intended to kill Zen regardless of the fact that he was endangering himself by going into the fire. He also felt this sudden urge to kill Laquitia as well. The sole reason of Langston's visit to the floating island of the Han clan was to see Laquitia. It was very common for the playboys of the wealthy clans to play a trick or two on Elena and Kelsey, but he didn't quite expect Zen to cause any hindrance. Langston made up his mind to kill Zen nonetheless. He didn't realize that this might not be an easy task, since Sheridan was just killed by Zen. Langston had looked down upon Zen at the very beginning. In most cases, the direct disciples of the wealthy clans regarded very lowly of the disciples of the sub-branches. The strength of the sub-branches, disciples of the wealthy clans, was less as compared to that of the direct disciples of the wealthy clans. Although the ordinary sub-branches, disciples wouldn't offend the direct disciples of the wealthy clans, Zen was no ordinary disciple. Laquitia was aware of the path that had formed between the flames. With a gentle flick of her slender fingers, wisps of blue flames made their way towards Langston. It was indeed difficult for a low-rank true god to deal with the flames. Countless talents in the arena of legends were burnt down by this move of Laquitia, but as the fifth-ranked mid-rank true god, Langston knew how to deal with the flames. He started waving his hands, giving rise to strong gusts of wind. "Dancing wind," he murmured. The spectators were astonished as the mass of wind followed Langston wherever he moved. Although Laquitia's flames were burning wildly, they couldn't get close to Langston. His face was full of contempt and hatred. He threw a wild look at Laquitia as he made his way slowly towards Zen. This man lets a woman protect him, and the woman isn't even his own. I have never met such a shameless man before. You must suffer the consequences of acquiring someone else's help. Burn, Langston raged. He raised his arm just as he finished speaking. A sharp bright light emerged from between his fingers as he prepared to direct the light towards Zen. With a swift motion, Laquisha got in between Langston and Zen. She transformed the flame into a snake which shot towards Langston. The snake was no threat to Langston. He chuckled as he brushed away the snake with a flick of his hand. Langston suddenly took off and appeared in front of Laquisha, much to her dismay. You haven't married into my clan yet, but still you'd be punished according to my clan's rules. Then you'd come to know what the principles of a wife are. Langston roared. Clap. Langston slapped Laquisha just as he finished talking. Laquisha did not see the slap coming as she was thrown sideways by its force. Zen didn't know how to react. He glared at Langston without saying much. He was too badly wounded to react. Master Evil in his mind said, "You young people are way too impulsive." Master Evil naturally didn't want him to provoke the playboys of these wealthy clans. And it was a wise decision not to react given his current strength and status. Yet Zen knew he had to do something. However, he was only a soul that was living in Zen's mind after all. How could he influence Zen's decision? You disgusting animal. Langston looked down at Zen and weird claw-like prints slowly popped out from his fingers, making their way towards Zen's face. Elena and Kelsey watched in horror, their fists clenched, not knowing what to do. Just as the claw prints were about to hit Zen, the door of the hall was suddenly pushed wide open and a powerful aura rushed in, followed by a man who hastily made his way towards Langston. There was a loud bang. Langston was pushed back by the loud blast and the deafening voice of the man could be heard all over the place. I just went to the Forbidden Land for a while, and you all acted wildly in my territory. Do you think the Han clan is weak? At the sight of the man, Elena heaved a sigh of relief and cheered, Brother. You finally came back. Chapter 1840. Who are you? Pascal Han did not possess a very impressive height nor was he physically appealing. However, after he entered the hall, he gave a remarkable aura. Most of the playboys and disciples of the wealthy clans in the floating islands were already proving godly warriors, low-rank true gods, or mid-rank true gods. After reaching the level of the top-rank true god, they stopped their practices and focused on reaching the consummation of true god realm and other higher levels. The mid-rank true gods had the supreme power among the wealthy clans. After all, their cultivation level was the most powerful one in this circle and their strength was naturally the strongest. Pascal ranked first in the mid-rank true gods, and was also the strongest among the younger generation of these clans. Hence, Pascal scoffed at these so-called playboys. These playboys were divided into 4 to 5 circles depending on their clan backgrounds. In the past, they had tried to impress Pascal, but he rarely bothered about them much. Pascal glanced at Langston indifferently and looked around. Soon, his eyes fell on Laquisha. The slap received from Langston was quite hard. Her swollen cheek and clear palm print were proofs of that. Pascal's blood boiled when he saw the palm print and he asked coldly, "Who hit you?" Before Laquisha could say anything, Elena pointed at Langston and shouted, "He was the idiot who hit her." With his eyes fixed on Langston, Pascal replied casually, "You are a bold man, Langston, to do such a gross thing." Langston asked coldly, "Pascal, do you even know what your sister did?" Langston firmly believed that he had the right to teach Laquisha a lesson. After all, she was to marry into their clan sooner or later. No man could remain indifferent after what she did. But Pascal was slowly advancing towards Langston as he said, "I don't care what my sister has done. Whoever dares to hit her, he or she must be prepared to face the consequences." Seeing Pascal approach him, Langston started to retreat. He raised his hands in defense and continued to explain, "Pascal, there is a reasonable explanation for everything. Our Leng clan." Langston thought that after hearing his own clan's name, Pascal might stop. After all, the Leng clan was much richer and more powerful than the Han clan. But Pascal left him with zero chance. Everyone felt that a great force was about to be released. All of a sudden, everyone's shoulders got heavy. Soon, Pascal was rushing towards Langston at an unbelievable speed. Pascal didn't even use his godly tile to crash into his shoulder. Pascal ranked first in the mid-rank true gods, while Langston was fifth. In general, the difference between their strengths shouldn't have been too big. But this was not the case here. While the competition among mid-rank true gods was extremely fierce, this was only reflected between the 2nd and 8th places. There was a cutthroat competition among the 7 disciples from the 2nd to the 8th place. For example, Langston just ranked 3rd last month, but now he dropped to the 5th place. There was not much difference in the strengths of these 7 people. However, the one in the 9th place was no match for these 7 people. Similarly, these 7 people were no match for Pascal. In the arena of legends, these 7 people were all defeated by Pascal. Langston Lang had been defeated by Pascal 4 times, in the arena of legends. Although Langston tried his best, he was nevertheless defeated with no great effort by Pascal. And that was the most humiliating part. When he met this guy again outside the arena of legends, Langston had no desire to fight him at all. Even after Pascal's attack, Langston did not try to fight back. He kept moving backwards, while trying to dodge the attack. Even though his speed was not slow, Pascal's speed was even faster. When he realized that he was unable to avoid Pascal's attack, Langston gritted his teeth and twisted his body. 2 golden Sanskrit words appeared at the back of his hands. As the rising hope of the younger generation of the Leng clan, Langston had obtained a lot of favors from his clan. These 2 golden Sanskrit words had always been his trump card, and it was totally unnecessary for him to use them to deal with Zen before. Now facing Pascal, he didn't hesitate at all. In the eyes of all the mid-rank true gods, Pascal was considered a monster. Is that really necessary? Noticing the golden Sanskrit words at the back of Langston's hands, Pascal smirked as he stretched out his hand and pulled him from a distance. An intense invisible force had Langston hurled towards Pascal. Before Langston could even react, Pascal slapped him hard on the face. This slap was much more powerful than the one Langston had slapped on Laquisha's face. However, Pascal still had some mercy. Otherwise, with his comprehension of the godly way, this slap could have slashed Langston's head off. In the arena of legends, many people had been slapped by Pascal and most of them were almost beheaded. Clap, the sound reverberated in the hall. Langston twisted and rolled in the air for a distance of more than 100 feet, before he slumped into a corner of the wall and passed out. I don't know or even care what the rules are. Whoever dares to touch my family must ask himself if he has the strength to face my wrath. Pascal shouted. His words seemed to be directed at both Langston and the playboys present from the wealthy clans. Pascal, your clan is at the mercy of our clan now. Do you really think you can have a good life after you offended our clan? Another voice came from the crowd. It was Langston's cousin, Hogan Lang. When Hogan saw his elder cousin being thrashed mercilessly, he felt humiliated and angry. That was why he threatened Pascal with the Leng clan. Everyone was aware that the Han clan cherished Leng clan's support, so Langston being bullied by the Han clan was not at all acceptable. Pascal sneered, "You mean you have the capabilities to represent the Leng clan?" Or for that matter, can that guy lying senseless on the floor represent the Leng clan? As the fourth-ranked clan, the Leng clan's situation was complicated. Even if the Leng clan was willing to let Langston marry Laquisha, it didn't mean that Langston had a very high position in the clan. Just like Pascal, even if he ranked the first in the mid-rank true gods, it did not make great deal of difference. What he represented was only the future of the Han clan, but even then he didn't have much say in it. In the eyes of the holy beings, the arena of legends was just a game for the children. If one wanted to obtain full strength in their own clan, they should be able to at least stand for themselves and be heard among others after reaching the consummation of true god realm. This was the rule of most wealthy clans. Hogan was speechless after Pascal's statement. Because what Pascal said was indeed the truth. Now get out of our Han clan's floating island, Pascal shouted angrily. The people from the other wealthy clans slightly trembled as they heard Pascal. Having left with nothing to say, they walked out of the hall with their heads bowed. Hogan also followed them, carrying Langston on his shoulder. Before he left, Hogan said, "It is true that we are no one to represent the Leng clan, but someone has to be responsible for Sheridan's death." As he said this, Hogan glared at Zen before leaving. Earlier, as soon as Pascal had entered the hall, he noticed a pool of blood in the middle of the hall. But at that time he was not aware that Sheridan had been killed. After the men left, he asked with a cool expression, "Who killed Sheridan?" Those men from the wealthy clans might not have decision-making power amongst themselves, but if they died, then things would get terribly serious. It was the same case like children when at home might not have much power, but if something happened to them, the parents would definitely demand an explanation. And the wealthy clans were no exception. "It's him who killed Sheridan," said one of the disciples of the Han clan, pointing at Zen. Pascal turned his head and stared at Zen. He was a little confused, and then asked coldly, "Who are you?"